Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Jaimie Han. Jaimie Han was born on October 25, 1983, in Orangeburg, South Carolina. She was a compassionate person who always put the needs of others first. She was known for her kindness and her ability to make people happy. Despite her parents' divorce and remarriage, but she grew up with her two brothers, Brett and Justin, and sister Ashley, and she maintaining a cheerful outlook. Jaimie attended an elite private prep school known for its academic excellence. Her friends and family saw her as a talented and enthusiastic person with a promising future in politics. During a school trip to the University of North Carolina in junior high, Jaimie became enamored with the campus and aspired to attend the institution. As she grew older, she joined the board of the Center of Hope, which supported troubled teenagers. She also became involved in various political campaigns, including Senator John Edwards' 2008 presidential campaign. Jaimie emerged as a prominent figure within the North Carolina Democratic Party. During this campaign, she met Nation, and the two developed a strong relationship. Over time, their relationship evolved from a platonic connection to a loved one. After just 4 months of dating, the couple got engaged and eventually married on April 18, 2009. Both Jaimie and Nation were successful in their careers, with Jaimie running her own consulting firm, focused on political fundraising, and Nation working as a well-known online strategist for politicians and nonprofits. People who knew them described them as exceptionally kind, tender, and generous. They have been actively involved in a project protecting young families in North Carolina. Although they didn't have children yet, they plan to start a family soon. Jonathan Broyhill, 31 years old, a close friend of Nation who had been staying in the couple's home as a guest. Jaimie was also familiar with Jonathan, having hired him as an accountant at her political consulting firm after he moved to North Carolina. Nation and Jaimie kindly him a place to stay in their home until he could find his own accommodation. Jonathan and Nation were from the same hometown, and their friendship began in 2000 during a church trip. Although they had a 4-year age difference, they quickly formed a close bond. Like many childhood friendships, they lost touch when one of them went to college, but reconnected after graduation and became very close. In fact, Jonathan was the best man at Nation and Jaimie's wedding in April 2009. The trio of Jonathan, Jaimie, and Nation was incredibly close-knit. This strong bond was built on unity, with the three sharing countless moments together. They go on vacation together, have dinner together every Monday, and enjoy holidays together. However, this was a difficult time for Jonathan, who had recently been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Jaimie and Nation were deeply concerned about Jonathan's well-being and had been supporting him throughout his medical journey. Jaimie was overcome with emotion one day and asked Nation if they should have a child soon. They wanted their future child to have the chance to know their dear friend Jonathan. The reason behind this sudden desire was Jonathan's recent cancer diagnosis. However, Jonathan's health struggles weren't new. Over the years, he had been in and out of hospitals multiple times. At one point, he had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis during a gallbladder operation. Given his fragile health, Jaimie and Nation invited Jonathan to live with them temporarily. They offered him care and support until he could recover. Jonathan spent so much time at Nation family home that some of their neighbors thought of him as a part of the family. Their deep and close relationship makes the violent incident in which all three were stabbed in their own home all the more puzzling and tragic. On a fateful Monday, Jonathan was already at the house, discussing work-related matters with Jaimie in the kitchen. Nation had just arrived home and was heading upstairs to change when they were startled by Jaimie's screams. Assuming the worst due to Jonathan's health issues, Nation rushed downstairs, where they met Jaimie's frantic voice, crying out for help. A frantic scene unfolded as Nation rushed into the kitchen, where he found his wife severely injured and bleeding on the floor, while Jonathan stood over her, menacingly wielding a large kitchen knife. The sight was too shocking for Nation to comprehend. Jonathan, with the knife raised, advanced toward Nation. Then, Nation with one hand, Nation grabbed the knife's blade and, with the other, struck Jonathan in the face. At the same time, Nation urgently told Jaimie to run for safety as he tried to subdue Jonathan. She managed to get up from the floor despite her serious injuries and ran through the side door to find help. Once Jaimie was out of the house, Nation overcame his shock, pushed Jonathan aside, and followed his wife. Outside, Jaimie struggled to reach the nearest neighbor's house but found no one home despite her knocking. While trying to reach the next house, exhausted and weakened by her injuries, Jaimie collapsed unconscious in the neighbor's yard. Fortunately, passers-by heard the commotion and came to her aid, and a neighbor who was alerted by Jaimie's screams called for an ambulance and the police. Nation frantically searched for Jaimie after realizing she was gone. Following a bloody trail, he found her in a neighbor's yard, clutching her side in agony but still conscious. Kneeling beside her, Nation held her hand and tried to reassure her, making promises about their future together, including children, vacations, and future anniversaries. Overwhelmed by the thought of losing her, Nation fought back tears as he spoke. As they waited for help to arrive, a neighbor rushed over with a towel to apply pressure to Jaimie's bleeding abdomen. The towel quickly became soaked in blood. Another neighbor tried to make Jaimie more comfortable by propping her legs up on a bag of leaves. The wait for an ambulance felt like an eternity to the onlookers. As minutes passed, Jaimie's breathing became labored, a clear sign of her critical condition. The ambulance team arrived and immediately performed first aid to save Jaimie's life. Nation, who had suffered serious cuts on his hand during the struggle, also needed immediate medical attention. Both Nation and Jaimie were rushed to the hospital. Upon arrival, she was immediately wheeled in for emergency surgery. Nation stitched up his own wound, but his mind was preoccupied with fear for his wife's condition. In shock, he tried multiple times to visit her in the ICU but was denied access. Sitting on a hospital bed, he anxiously waiting for information on Jaimie's condition. He also was aware of the severity of her injuries, numerous stab wounds, a severed artery, and extensive liver damage. All he could do was hope and pray that she would pull through. Against all odds, Jaimie survived the surgery, but unfortunately, this brief moment of hope was short-lived. She never regained consciousness and passed away 2 days later. She succumbing to the injuries she sustained. The autopsy revealed that Jaimie had suffered 24 stab wounds on various parts of her body, including her face, neck, back, hands, and forearms. The most severe injuries were inflicted on her abdomen and chest, which caused significant damage to her lungs and liver. After inflicting injuries on himself, Jonathan spent 8 days in the hospital recovering. On April 30, 2013, while still recovering and wearing bandages on both wrists, he was transported on a stretcher to a Wake County magistrate's office. There, he was officially charged with first-degree murder in Jaimie's case and assault with a deadly weapon against another individual, Nation. Due to the severity of the charges, he was held without bail. Then taken to Central Prison in Raleigh, which had a hospital wing where he could continue receiving medical treatment while in custody. The sudden and tragic loss of Jaimie left many people deeply affected and wondering why someone she considered a best friend would commit such a horrific act, robbing her of her future. After her death, rumors spread that a large amount of money had gone missing from the election campaign managed by Jaimie's team. Jonathan, who had been the team's accountant, stopped working for the company at the end of 2012, but continued to provide financial information to Jaimie and help with financial reports. Some people suspected that Jaimie had discovered the missing funds, which totaled over $50,000, and confronted Jonathan about this. This confrontation might have triggered his violent outburst. On the day of the incident, April 22, 2013, Jaimie had invited Jonathan to their usual Monday dinner to discuss the company's financial issues. Many believe that Jaimie might have questioned Jonathan about the missing funds at that time. 6 months after the tragic incident, Jaimie's husband, Nation, and her family scattered her ashes near the Pulaski Memorial Baptist Church. This church was a place Jaimie had voluntarily dedicated a lot of time and effort to. A week before the tragedy. The irony is that Jaimie had asked the church's pastor to pray for Jonathan, who was believed to be battling cancer. Little did Jaimie know that their lives would soon be shattered. Nation had to come to terms with the fact that someone he had known since childhood had taken the life of the woman he loved. For Nation, Jaimie was everything, his partner, his confidant. After Jaimie's passing, the trial of Jonathan Broyhill began on March 4, 2015. The district attorney told the jury that Jonathan, Jaimie's financial manager, had misappropriated around $50,000 from her account by writing 39 checks to himself. Jonathan made various excuses to justify his actions, including health problems from multiple sclerosis, memory issues, a gallbladder operation, and pancreatic cancer. According to Nation, Jaimie knew about the missing money but chose not to confront Jonathan about it because his health is not good. Instead, she hopes Jonathan will admit his mistake and correct it on his own. However, everything changed when Jaimie got a call from a debt collector. The district attorney revealed a shocking truth. A year prior, Jonathan's first hospitalization was a result of an incident at the Jaimie residence. Prior to this, Jonathan had never medical treatment, which was confirmed by his health records. He had been deceiving Jaimie and Nation about his health, falsely claiming to have had a gallbladder operation, multiple sclerosis, and cancer. In reality, his medical history only showed a mental disorder. Jonathan's internet search history showed he had researched pancreatic cancer and specialists in that field, possibly to make his fabrication more believable. He had also looked up cruises that did not require a passport. Furthermore, Jonathan had booked a one-way trip to Las Vegas for April 23, but canceled it on the 22nd, just 2 hours before attacking Jaimie with a knife. Jonathan confessed to the authorities that he had misused campaign funds and fabricated his medical conditions. Although Jonathan said he needed medical attention, but he would secretly leave while Nation waited in the car. Nation did not know that he was deceiving them about his true intentions. Around this time, Jonathan was struggling with depression and suicidal thoughts. He was also experiencing auditory hallucinations, hearing voices that encouraged him to harm others. He had even purchased a knife with the intention of using it to end his life in Vegas. However, when Jaimie confronted him about the financial irregularities, Jonathan's emotional state escalated, and he began inflicting injuries on himself. As the situation spiraled out of control, Jaimie tried to intervene, but Jonathan's anger and delirium led him to attack her impulsively. He remembered attacking Jaimie but had no recollection of chasing Nation. Jonathan's lawyer acknowledged that the evidence against him was overwhelming, making it impossible to dismiss the charges. Instead, they planned to argue for temporary insanity to reduce the sentence. On March 19, 2015, the jury delivered their verdict, finding Jonathan Broyhill guilty of murdering Jaimie Han and attempting to murder Nation Hahn, both first-degree charges. The judge sentenced Jonathan to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Vicky Roberts. Vicky Roberts, born Victoria Smith, was born in September 1984 in Cheshire, England. She grew up in a conservative and religious family with an older sister. The sisters attended a Christian school where they developed their musical talents and sang in the choir. Vicky was known for being kind, friendly, and helpful, always willing to lend a hand. After high school, Vicky enrolled in university, and worked part-time at an IKEA store to fund her education. That's where she met Michael Roberts, a charismatic and sociable young man who was only a year older than her. Michael was also a student and an athlete who took care of his appearance. Initially, Vicky found Michael too talkative and intrusive, but he eventually won her over with his charming personality. Michael was born in June 1983 in Warrington, Cheshire, to a prominent chemical engineer and his family. As the eldest of two sons, Michael was raised with high expectations and strict discipline. His parents instilled in him the belief that he was destined for greatness, and Michael grew up to be ambitious, driven, and confident. He was a natural socialite, effortlessly making friends and commanding attention with his charismatic personality. His striking appearance, sense of humor, and intellectual curiosity only added to his charm. However, his parents' constant praise and emphasis on his superiority may have contributed to Michael's growing narcissism, which intensified over time. Michael desperately wanted to please his parents, so he strived to be the perfect son and meet their expectations. Meanwhile, Roberts, a womanizer, had a string of girlfriends and mistresses. He was skilled at secretly dating multiple people simultaneously, making each one believe they were the only one. He got a thrill from pursuing girls, particularly those who seemed out of his reach. One such girl was Vicky, who Michael was determined to win over. Initially, she kept him at arm's length, rejecting even his casual invitations to walk together after work or grab coffee. Vicky was a dedicated student and devoted her free time to church activities, leaving no room for dating or romance. It took Michael a few months to convince Vicky to go out with him. He won her over with his charming and sweet nature, showering her with flowers, gifts, and little surprises. He even took her to meet his parents, who adored her and gave their seal of approval for their son's choice. Vicky was convinced of his sincerity and eventually agreed to be his girlfriend. Michael became her first love and, for a while, her only one. She was deeply happy with him, and it seemed like destiny had brought them together. Michael, too, seemed to fall in love and was ready to settle down, but their happiness was short-lived. From the outside, their relationship looked perfect. They were both young, attractive, full of energy, ambitious, and had big plans for the future. However, Vicky soon discovered that Michael had an irrepressible sexual appetite and a passion for experimentation in bed. At first, Michael didn't pressure Vicky too much, fearing she would leave him. But once he was confident she wouldn't go anywhere, he revealed his true desires. The modest and religious Vicky was shocked by what was happening, but she was deeply in love with Michael and trusted him. For a long time, she kept their bedroom secrets hidden behind closed doors. Michael made her an official marriage proposal, which she happily accepted. She genuinely believed that after the wedding, her fiancé would stop his extreme experiments. Meanwhile, one of Vicky's closest friends began to notice that she was hiding bruises and small injuries under her clothes. The friend confronted Vicky, asking if her fiancé was abusing her and if she needed help. At first, Vicky denied everything, but eventually admitted that the marks were a result of her fiancé's extreme intimate experiments. Michael had a strong passion for bondage and using various toys and devices. Vicky confided in her friend that they had intimate encounters up to 5 times a day, but Michael still remained unsatisfied. He saw himself as a skilled lover, and intimacy was an art form and a way for him to express himself. Although Michael occasionally made concessions when Vicky refused to participate in some of his dangerous experiments, he usually managed to convince her to go along with his desires. After defending her diploma, Vic found herself facing an unplanned pregnancy, which prompted her to change jobs. She was soon hired as an account manager at a logistics company. Around the same time, Michael left IKEA and began working as a sales consultant at a large retail chain selling electronics. Michael flourished in his new role, leveraging his charisma, communication, and persuasive skills to consistently exceed sales targets. As a result, he quickly rose through the ranks, earning a promotion to senior sales. The management even considered transferring him to the main office, but first he needed to undergo training and improve his qualifications. As Michael attended training sessions and traveled to London for business, he felt proud and accomplished. However, in the process, he began to neglect his young fiancée, Vic. He only seemed to remember her existence when he needed intimacy, and their relationship suffered as a result. They stopped talking, hardly spent time together, and outside of the bedroom, Vic seemed to be invisible to him. Michael started having numerous affairs with co-workers, clients, and mere acquaintances while simultaneously planning his wedding to Vicky. He had an insatiable appetite for intimacy with various women, which boosted his self-esteem and gave him a sense of accomplishment. When Vicky discovered she was pregnant, she excitedly shared the news with Michael, expecting him to expedite their wedding plans. However, Michael's reaction was one of anger and frustration. He insisted that Vicky terminate the pregnancy, citing their young age and the idea that they had their whole lives ahead of them to have children. Vicky was shocked by his demand, but refused to consider abortion, prompting Michael to try to persuade her through other means. Michael convinced the bride, Vicky, that if her religious parents found out she was pregnant and living with him out of wedlock, they would be furious. He promised that they would keep the abortion a secret and have children after they got married. Vicky was torn, but Michael's persuasive nature eventually won her over, and she had the procedure. However, the abortion came with complications, and Vicky spent several days in the hospital, followed by 3 weeks of recovery. The doctor strictly forbade her from having sex during this time, which sent Michael into a rage. It dawned on Vicky that Michael had mental health issues and a sex addiction. Without intimacy, he became unhinged, often leaving the house, claiming he had urgent work matters to attend to. Vicky suspected that Michael was seeking intimacy outside their relationship, but she genuinely believed that everything would change after they got married, and she could help him overcome his infidelity. However, their 2-year engagement revealed a different reality. Michael had no intention of marrying Vicky, as his current situation suited him perfectly. He had a loyal fiancée at home who took care of his household needs, as well as multiple mistresses on the side, whom he regularly replaced. Vicky always took Michael's promises at face value, even when she discovered his infidelity. She forgave him as long as he assured her it was the last time and that he would change. However, as time passed, Vicky began to pressure Michael for marriage, as she wanted a complete family and children. Her parents also increasingly raised this question, but what ultimately pushed the issue was the insistence of Michael's parents, whom he didn't want to disappoint. Vicky was a kind and sweet person whom everyone loved. Her parents-in-law adored her and considered her an ideal match for their son. They were eager to see the couple get married and have grandchildren. With the help of their parents, the couple organized a grand wedding with all the trimmings, including a white dress and a limousine. The newlyweds looked happy and in love, with a long and fulfilling life ahead of them. After the wedding, the couple settled into a large and cozy house in a prestigious area of Warrington, not far from Robert's parents. However, what the relatives didn't know was that Michael had a dark side that Vicky was already well aware of. Despite being married, Michael did not love Vicky and only saw her as a way to appear normal in the eyes of others. Vicky never complained about Michael's infidelities and strange behaviors, and he was able to continue cheating on her without anyone suspecting a thing. At work, Michael was successful, earning promotions and a good salary after being transferred to a new office. Michael's direct supervisor, Carrie Hall, was a 10-year-old older, divorced mother who worked as the head of administration at Phones for You. Despite her busy schedule, she was attractive, well-groomed, and strong-willed as required by her position. For a long time, she ignored the signs of attention from her young subordinate, Michael. However, Michael saw this as a challenge and made a concerted effort to win her over, using his natural charm and eloquence. After about a month, Carrie reciprocated, and they began a romantic relationship, secretly meeting in hotel rooms. Carrie described their relationship as turbulent, passionate, and experimental. As a mature, self-confident woman, Carrie was flattered by the attention of a younger man and was open to trying new things. With her, Michael could fulfill his fantasies that he couldn't with his modest wife. Michael frequently deceived his wife by claiming he was working late or attending corporate trainings, when in reality, he was meeting his mistress. He confided in his mistress about his unhappiness in his marriage, calling it a youthful mistake and expressing his willingness to divorce his wife. However, he failed to take action as his wife refused to grant him a divorce. The affair with Carrie lasted over a year, but she didn't pressure him for divorce, content with their secret hotel trysts, physical marks, and risky games. Carrie, a sports enthusiast who always took pride in her figure, suddenly changed her style after starting a relationship with Michael. She began wearing long-sleeved, high-necked clothes, which was unusual for her. A concerned friend noticed the change, and Carrie confided in her about Michael's unusual intimate preferences. She revealed that Michael enjoyed experimenting with rough, controlling behaviors, such as biting, squeezing, and tying her up. Carrie showed her friend the physical marks these activities had left on her body. Although her friend urged her to go to the police, Carrie refused, saying that she had consented to these activities and that Michael usually warned her beforehand. However, she admitted that things sometimes got out of control, like when Michael would strangle her to supposedly enhance her pleasure, causing her to lose consciousness. Despite fearing these strangulation games, Carrie continued to succumb to Michael's persuasion, hoping that he would eventually tire of these cruel experiments or that she would become desensitized to them. Michael's wife and mistresses didn't try to intervene. Before they got married, Vicky had already suspected Michael's infidelity through open letters and a love letter. Despite knowing about his affairs, she believed her love and care could transform him into an exemplary family man. However, after their wedding, the situation deteriorated, and Michael convincingly denied his cheating. Vicky decided to investigate her husband's infidelity by looking through his phone while he was asleep. She was shocked to discover numerous intimate conversations between Michael and Carrie, as well as other girls, including explicit photos. Despite her devastation, Vicky did not want to upset her family, so she kept the discovery to herself and moved in with a friend instead of telling her parents and sister. Before leaving, Vicky wrote a heartfelt letter to Michael, confessing her love for him and acknowledging that he was the central figure in her life. However, she also made it clear that she was aware of his infidelity and would not tolerate it. Vicky informed Michael that she was giving him time to reflect on their relationship, but she would not stay in the marriage if his behavior continued. She wrote the letter by hand and left it on the refrigerator for him to find. Michael didn't feel emotional about the message, nor was he upset by his wife's departure. However, he didn't want to lose the comfort of having a quiet and obedient partner who took care of the household and put up with his quirky behavior and unusual tastes. That same evening, Michael went to Vicky's friend's house, bringing a large bouquet of flowers. He got down on his knees, apologized, and begged Vicky to come back to him, promising to be faithful and making her his one and only. Vicky wanted to believe him and decided to return home, where a new mistress was waiting. Michael didn't stop seeing Carrie, but he became more cautious and even made an effort to come home for dinner, which his wife had carefully prepared. He deleted messages on his phone, changed the password on his social media profiles, and started an affair with a young employee named Karen Wilson, who was engaged to be married. Despite this, Michael pursued Karen relentlessly, making himself out to be a miserable and unhappy lover. He was so drawn to Karen that after 2 months, he decided to end things with 33-year-old Carrie Hall, whom he had grown tired of. Michael told Karen a fabricated story about being unhappy in his marriage and promised to leave his wife soon. Karen eventually gave in, and they became intimate in the office. A week later, she broke off her engagement and waited for Michael to follow through on his promise. Michael didn't plan to divorce Vicky, but he wanted to end their connection and start a new relationship with another woman. To achieve this, he lied to Vicky, telling her that he had already filed for divorce and moved in with his parents. This was a fatal mistake, as Vicky became suspicious that he was still cheating on her. Decided to take action, Vicky waited until Michael was in the shower and took his phone, but she found nothing incriminating because he had deleted all text messages and changed the password on his social media account. Undeterred, Vicky waited until Michael fell asleep and then took his work laptop, where she discovered his account on the social network was still active. On the laptop, she found conversations with his new girlfriend, in which he confessed his love, claimed to be divorcing his wife, and said he was living with his parents. The discovery was a huge shock for Vicky. She took screenshots of the intimate messages as proof of her husband's infidelity and saved them on her laptop. She also found several hotel room receipts in his wallet, which further implicated him. The next morning, Vicky confronted Michael with the evidence, and for the first time in their relationship, she lost her temper. Michael tried to apologize and promised to change, but Vicky threatened to tell his parents everything, hoping they could finally make him see sense. Michael was furious when his wife Vicky threatened to reveal his secrets to his parents. In a fit of rage, he slapped her. Vicky, determined to carry out her threat, got up and headed for the door. Michael caught up with her, grabbed a heavy jewelry box from the dressing table, and hit her twice on the head, knocking her unconscious. Then, he squeezed her throat with his hands until she stopped breathing. With no remorse, Michael wrapped Vicky's lifeless body in a blanket, packed it into several large garbage bags, and carried it to the garage. He then quickly cleaned up the house, removing most of Vicky's belongings. After calling Karen, he invited her over and they had dinner, enjoying themselves in the same house where he had just murdered his wife. The next day, Michael ran off with Karen, leaving behind the scene of his crime. Michael told his parents that his wife had left him for another man. To convince them, he went to their home, cried on his mother's shoulder, and showed her messages on his wife's phone. But what he didn't reveal was that he had sent those messages himself, pretending to be his wife. The messages said that she had lost interest in him, met someone else, and wanted to live with this new person. Meanwhile, Michael also sent messages to his wife's parents from her phone, saying that she had fallen in love with someone else, left with him, and asked them not to contact her and give her space. The Smiths, concerned about their daughter Vicky, immediately tried to contact her, but their calls were consistently rejected. In response, they only received messages asking them to give her time, which seemed strange to them. They then decided to visit Michael's house to get some answers, but his story only raised more questions and doubts. When they discovered that Vicky had stopped showing up for work without warning, they became even more worried and decided to file a police report. On December 1, 2009, the police launched an investigation. It was discovered that Michael had purchased a shovel, rope, rags, and detergents from a hardware store that day, which seemed suspicious. However, he hadn't disposed of the body by the time the police arrived at his home. Although the police didn't find anything incriminating, Michael's behavior and story raised many questions. What was particularly striking was that they overlooked a large package in the corner of the garage. During the initial inspection of the marital home, no signs of the missing woman's clothes, documents, or personal belongings were found, suggesting that she might have voluntarily left. However, Vicky's laptop was discovered in the bedroom, and upon seizing it, the police found screenshots of Michael's conversations with his mistresses, which Vicky had saved. The police then requested a geolocation of Vicky's cell phone, which regularly received messages from her husband and relatives. The search revealed that the phone had been in the marital home the entire time. In a subsequent search of the Roberts home, law enforcement officials made a disturbing discovery in the garage. But just as they were processing this new evidence, Michael suddenly vanished from under their noses, taking a wallet with cash that allowed him to remain hidden for several days. Michael's money ran out, so he turned to one of his mistresses, Lavina T., asking to stay with her for a while. However, one evening, she heard on the news that Michael was wanted for murdering his wife. Without hesitation, she reported his whereabouts to the police, leading to his arrest. When questioned, Michael broke down in tears, claiming he was innocent. He insisted that his wife's death was an accident, resulting from a consensual intimate game where she asked him to strangle her with a rope belt, but he overdid it. However, forensic experts uncovered contradictory evidence. The autopsy revealed that Michael's wife was strangled with bare hands, attacked from behind, and had 2 extensive hematomas on her head that occurred before her death, ruling out any connection to the alleged intimate game. Michael's trial began in January 2010, where he continued to plead innocence and hoped for leniency. Nevertheless, the autopsy results proved that Michael brutally hit his wife twice on the head and then strangled her, hiding her body in the garage. Michael Roberts was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, but with the possibility of parole after serving 17 years. This means that, if he demonstrates good behavior, he may be eligible for release as early as 2027. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Michelle Anglin. Michelle Anglin was born on November 27, 1973, in Fountain Valley, California. Later, her family moved to Arizona, where she was raised by her mother, Peggy, and stepfather, Larry McCall. Michelle had 2 older sisters, Cindy and Christina. When Michelle was around 20 years old, she started dating Hudson England, and their relationship blossomed. They made each other happy, and when Hudson proposed, Michelle accepted without hesitation. In late 1995, they got married in a joyous ceremony surrounded by their families and friends. Michelle's mother, Peggy Cohen McCall, was also a realtor. According to Michelle's mother, it was she who inspired Michelle to enter the real estate industry. Michelle's family would regularly keep in touch with her via her work phone when she was in the office. When showing houses to clients, Michelle always carried a pager, allowing her loved ones to reach her if needed. However, on February 9, 1996, Michelle did not respond to calls and messages from her family. She would usually inform someone about her plans to show a house to a potential buyer. The job of a realtor can be fraught with risk, often exceeding that of other professions. This is due in part to the nature of their work, which often involves working alone and visiting isolated locations to show properties. Predators often target realtors, luring them to empty homes with false intentions, such as feigning interest in buying a house. Once the realtor is alone and vulnerable, the predator can take advantage of the situation. Concern for this inherent danger led Michelle's family to become worried when they couldn't contact her during the day. Michelle's sister Cindy sought assistance from her boyfriend, a member of the Phoenix Police, who offered to perform a welfare check on Michelle. When he visited her workplace, he discovered Michelle's parked car, which seemed undisturbed. When Cindy's boyfriend entered the office, he found the lights on and music playing. However, a closer look revealed that Michelle's personal belongings, including her purse and pager, were still on a table in the unlocked office. This raised questions about why she had left in such a hurry, abandoning her belongings behind. That evening, Michelle's family filed a missing persons report with the police. Earlier that day, Michelle had an appointment with a potential buyer to show them 3 houses near her office. Since the houses were close to her office, she decided not to use her car. When the police arrived, they inspected Michelle's office and then visited the 3 houses she might have shown the buyer. During their initial search, they found 3 pink buttons in the master closet on the 2nd floor of one of the houses. They also noticed that 2 candles in the master bathroom had been knocked over, one into each sink, but everything else seemed undisturbed. Cindy's boyfriend asked her about Michelle's outfit, as police found buttons they suspected belonged to her. Cindy couldn't recall. A search of the houses, especially where the buttons were found, led to a tragic discovery that Michelle's body under the master bed. Investigation revealed seminal fluid, broken candlesticks, Michelle's clothes, and paint and plaster chips under the bed and in the bathroom. The forensic examination found no evidence of forced intimate contact before Michelle's death. However, it suggested the perpetrator intended to do so, undressing Michelle despite her resistance. Bruises on her neck indicated she was strangled while fighting back. The violent confrontation occurred in the master closet and bath, as shown by scattered buttons, seminal fluid, damaged candles, and broken ceramic chips. During the attack, Michelle's clothing was torn off, as evident by her tattered and interwoven clothes. Her body showed multiple signs of the intense struggle, numerous bruises and abrasions on her body, defensive wounds on her hands and wrists. Michelle's desperate fight to defend herself against her assailant ultimately proved futile. After her daughter's death, Peggy spoke out about the safety concerns facing women who work alone, including real estate agents in model homes and open houses. As a result of her vocal advocacy, Peggy claims to have been fired from her job. The police's first lead in the investigation was Michelle's husband, Hudson England. It's standard procedure for law enforcement to initially investigate family members to determine if they were involved in the crime. Michelle's family, however, did not suspect Hudson, as they were a happy couple who had married just 4 months prior to her death. Nevertheless, the investigators decided to look into Hudson's alibi. When questioned by the police, Hudson appeared genuinely distraught over Michelle's death. He claimed to have spent the day visiting several car dealerships in search of a family vehicle, as they were planning to start a family. The police verified his alibi and found it to be true, ultimately ruling him out as a suspect. During the investigation, he stated that he had no idea who would want to harm Michelle and speculated that she was likely attacked by someone she was showing a house to. To further investigate, the police reviewed Michelle's phone records and discovered that on February 9th, between 3:45 and 4:15 p.m., she was on a call with a fellow sales agent. Michelle abruptly ended the call, stating that a potential buyer had arrived at the subdivision. The fellow agent attempted to call Michelle back between 4:30 and 5 p.m., but the calls went unanswered. This information allowed detectives to narrow down the time frame of the attack, but they still needed to identify the person Michelle was supposed to meet. Unfortunately, Michelle had not mentioned the potential buyer's name during the phone conversation, nor had she written it in her work notes, leaving the police without any immediate leads on the identity of the mysterious individual. The police investigation into the attack on Michelle involved interviewing people who lived in the area where the incident occurred. One resident, who happened to be returning home from work between 4 o'clock and 4:45 p.m. on February 9th, reported seeing a white man coming down the steps of one of the 3 houses for sale in the neighborhood. This witness also noticed a black, full-sized, older model Chevrolet pickup truck with California license plates parked in the lot of the house. Additionally, several potential buyers who visited the subdivision that day between 4 o'clock and 4:30 p.m. reported seeing a man walking from the direction of the second and third model homes. They also observed that candlesticks in the master bathroom of the third model home had been knocked over into the sinks. Kim Ramos, a young real estate sales associate from a nearby subdivision, contacted the police after hearing the news. She reported that on February 9th, the same day Michelle's body was found at around 2 p.m., she had met with a potential buyer who drove an old black Chevrolet pickup truck. Kim found it suspicious that he was interested in a $500,000 house, but drove a vehicle that suggested a more modest lifestyle. When Kim accompanied he to a 2-story house, supposedly to answer his questions, she became uneasy. He stood too close to her and casually touched her hand several times, making her wary. After spending only a brief time with him, Kim returned to the sales office, feeling that his questions about the house, such as the type of flooring and the possibility of adding a fourth bedroom, seemed unnecessary and even foolish. Miss Ramos played a crucial role in the investigation by asking the suspicious client to fill out a guest registration card, which he reluctantly completed. The client, who claimed to be James Adams, provided his real home address and phone number. When police visited the address, they spotted a black Chevrolet pickup truck with California license plates parked outside. The truck was registered to 32-year-old James Van Adams, who was not at home at the time. Police took photos of the truck and showed them to Kim, who confirmed that it was the same vehicle driven by the suspicious client she had met just hours before Michelle's death. Further investigation into James Van Adams' background revealed that Adams was a 32-year-old man who was currently separated from his wife and had a child. He had a prior conviction in California for a crime committed in 1990. In that case, Adams had targeted Melissa Cunningham, a petite sales agent who was working alone at an apartment complex. He had asked her to show him model homes that were still under construction, specifically expressing interest in a two-story home with a master bedroom and bathroom upstairs. This event further increased suspicions about Adams. Investigating Michelle England's death led detectives to quickly uncover a previous failed attack by James Adams. They obtained a search and arrest warrant, returned to Adams' home, and took him in for questioning. However, Adams refused to cooperate, appeared nervous, and had noticeable injuries on his face, including under his eye. The detectives suspected that these injuries might have been sustained when Michelle defended herself with the missing candlesticks, which were later found. As a result, they collected DNA, blood, and hair samples from Adams. A witness, Kim Ramos, identified him and reported that he had no visible injuries on his face during their meeting. Adams claimed his injuries came from working on his pickup truck, but work records showed he left early on February 9 and didn't return, citing car troubles. When seen next, he had a new facial injury and black eye, which his employer and coworker said weren't there before. The police analysis of Adams' DNA, blood, and hair samples is detailed in court documents, which also reference a sample of seminal fluid found on the carpet in the closet. The Phoenix Crime Lab and DPS Lab conducted DNA testing on a carpet sample. Initially, results excluded James Van Adams, but retesting by the crime lab and further testing included him as a contributor. Despite the police taking extensive fingerprint and footprint evidence from the model home, none of the prints matched Adams. Adams was charged with the murder of Michelle England and denied any involvement in the crime. His trial began on July 1, 1997. During the trial, prosecutors presented evidence that they claimed linked Adams to Michelle's death. One key witness was Kim Ramos, who believed she had narrowly escaped being attacked by Adams herself. Ramos testified that Adams had shown suspicious behavior, including wearing casual clothing, driving an old vehicle, and asking unusual questions about the house's flooring and fourth bedroom. Prosecutors also presented evidence of Adams' interactions with other sales agents in California and Broyhill, which they claimed showed a pattern of suspicious behavior. Susan Wright, an employee, met with Adams multiple times. Their first meeting was in September or October 1995, when Adams asked Wright to show him a house. Wright recalled Adams standing too close and not asking questions about the house. On November 5, 1995, James Van Adams visited Susan's office again, signing in as Jim Adams. This was not an incident, as Adams had repeatedly visited her office and called her, asking her out on dates. A pattern of behavior emerged, revealing Adams' deliberate plan of action. Adams targeted women with similar characteristics, attacking them in California in 1990. Victims Michelle, Susan Wright, Kim Ramos, and Melissa Cunningham worked alone and shared physical traits. Attacks occurred in the afternoon, with Adams often asking victims to accompany him upstairs in a two-story house. He used a similar method, putting his right arm around their necks, ripping off their clothes, and attempting to assault them. The trial was a challenging experience for Michelle's family, who were present throughout the proceedings. The judge had to invite Michelle's mother to go out from the courtroom because she was overcome with emotion and yelled at Adams. However, Adams appeared to take pleasure in the family's distress, occasionally flashing a grin. Nevertheless, his demeanor changed when the jury delivered a guilty verdict on all counts on July 14, 1997, and he was subsequently sentenced to death. Following the sentencing, Adams launched a series of appeals, claiming he was innocent. In his appeal, he argued that a previous incident in California in 1990, in which Melissa Cunningham escaped, supported his claim that he did not intentionally try to kill Michelle. Adams alleged that during the California attack, he had simply restrained his victim by the neck in an attempt to make intimate contact. He insisted that this incident demonstrated that he did not plan to kill Michelle, and the jury should have considered this when reaching their verdict. James Van Adams' attempts to appeal his death sentence were denied, and on March 14, 2005, he took his own life while in prison. An autopsy revealed that the cause of death was asphyxia, consistent with suicide. The news of his death brought relief to the family of Michelle. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Tracy Hahn and JB Beasley. JB Beasley, born on July 31, 1981, in Troy, Alabama, to parents Cheryl and Hilton Lanier Beasley. After her parents' separation, Beasley moved to Dothan with her mother in 1984. She was deeply loved by her mother and stepfather, Joey Begun, whom her mother married a few years later. Beasley grew up in a comfortable home in Dothan, Alabama, with her 4 sisters. She developed into a sociable young woman with a wide range of interests, including cheerleading, dance, piano, and swimming. She also worked as a model, along with her sisters, for several agencies. Despite her many pursuits, she valued time spent with friends and family. In high school, Beasley befriended Tracy Hahn, a fellow cheerleader. They quickly became inseparable. Tracy Hahn was born on March 3, 1982, to Carolyn and Robert Hahn. Her father, a member of the Dothan Police Department, tragically passed away when Tracy was just 5 years old. Her mother, Carolyn, later remarried a man named Mike Roberts, who helped raise Tracy Hahn alongside her mother. Tracy Hahn was a shy but selfless person who always put others before herself. She was particularly protective of her 2 younger brothers and took her responsibilities as an older sister seriously. Like Beasley, Tracy Hahn attended Northview High School, earning good grades and participating as a cheerleader. As Beasley and Tracy Hahn were transitioning into adulthood, they were unaware of the tragic events that would soon shatter their hopes and dreams. On the evening of July 31, 1999, around 10:05 p.m., they friends left Dothan in JB Beasley's black 1993 Mazda 929, heading to a birthday party in Headland, just a few miles north. However, their unfamiliarity with the roads soon led them into difficulty. Beasley and Tracy Hahn started their trip but took a wrong turn shortly after leaving their hometown, becoming lost. At around 10:30 p.m., they stopped at a BP gas station in Headland, near the intersection of routes 173 and 431, to get directions. From the gas station's payphone, they called their friends to get clearer directions to their party destination. However, after continuing their trip, they found themselves in Ozark, Alabama, approximately 24 miles northwest of Headland, rather than their desired location. At 11:30 p.m., they realized they were still lost and pulled over at the Big Little store to get their bearings. Although the store was closed, Tracy Hahn used the payphone to call her mother, explaining that they had gotten lost and were now in Ozark. She updated her mother on their plans to return home rather than continue their search for the party. A woman named Marilyn Merrick and her daughters pulled into a gas station to buy a soda. Tracy, Hallett, and Beasley approached them, asking for directions to Dothan. Marilyn did her best to explain the route, and they seemed to grasp it. She noticed that they appeared to be well-mannered and were driving a clean and tidy car. As Marilyn watched, they followed her directions, pulling out of the parking lot and turning right. On August 1, 1999, Tracy Hallett's mother filed a missing person report with the police around 8 a.m. Investigators quickly began searching for Tracy Hallett and her friend, Beasley, who had not been seen since the previous night. Their first lead came when police discovered Beasley's car parked on Herring Avenue in Ozark. The vehicle showed signs of recent use, with an almost empty gas tank despite being filled the day before. The car was also dirty and had a partially rolled down driver's side window, yet the doors were locked with no signs of forced entry. Inside, police found Beasley's driver's license on the dashboard, along with 8 purses and cash, which suggested that the disappearance was not a result of a typical theft or robbery. The investigation into She's initially focused on finding Beasley's car keys, as they were the only reported missing item. However, there was no sign of either Tracy Hallett or Beasley. A suspicious palm print on the locked trunk of Beasley's car heightened the police's concerns that something was terribly wrong. Although they suspected the trunk might hold important clues, they couldn't access it without the keys. It took 6 hours for the police to realize that the trunk could be opened from the inside using a latch, eliminating the need for the car key or a locksmith. Upon opening the trunk, the officers made a disturbing discovery. The lifeless bodies of the girls were found inside. Both victims were fully dressed, but their pants were soiled below the waist. Each girl had a single gunshot wound to the head, with Tracy Hallett shot in the temple and Beasley in the right cheek. Tracy Hallett had suffered injuries consistent with a violent struggle, including a 9mm shell casing lodged on her leg, scratches on her arm, and thornbriars tangled in her jeans. Despite the gruesome nature of the crime, investigators believed that they were likely killed while inside the trunk of the car, and that their deaths were not the result of a random attack, but rather an intentional act. As the families of the victims were notified of the tragic discovery, the authorities formally launched a homicide investigation. Initially, detectives considered robbery as a possible motive, but this theory was quickly dismissed when they found that the victims' personal belongings, including purses, jewelry, money, and credit cards, were still inside the car. Autopsies revealed that they had no alcohol or drugs in their system, and there was no evidence of sexual assault. This led investigators to rule out the possibility that the crime was motivated by sex. However, a subsequent report from the state crime lab, issued more than 2 months later, found traces of unknown semen on Tracy Hallett's clothing and skin. The palm print found on the trunk lid remained unidentified, with no matches in the database and no suspect to compare it to. As a result, authorities had limited leads to pursue. Despite the widespread attention the double murder of the teenagers received, investigators were no closer to identifying a suspect. A month after the discovery of Beasley and Tracy Hallett's bodies, a surprising breakthrough occurred. Johnny William Barentine, a 28-year-old Ozark resident, visited the Ozark Police Department on September 1 and shared a remarkable account. He claimed to have witnessed the double murder, stating that he had seen the incident on the same night as the crimes, around the time Tracy Hallett made a call from the Big Little Store's payphone. According to Barentine, he had been out buying milk for his 2-year-old son when he stumbled upon the horrific event. He returned home at 1 a.m., visibly upset, and told his wife that he had been in a collision with a black truck near Herring Road. After sharing this incident with friends in the days that followed Tracy Hallett and Beasley's murder, they encouraged him to report it to the police. They suggested that this information might be connected to the murders and could help the police solve the case, ultimately leading to the reward. During a 4-hour interview with Ozark police, Barentine's account of the events surrounding the killings changed 6 times. Initially, he told police that on the night of the murders, he saw a black truck speeding away from the area where the bodies were found. However, as the interview progressed, his story continued to evolve and change. Eventually, Barentine claimed that he had given a ride to a tattooed man he didn't know, and they drove past the Big Little store together. He then testified that the man got into the car with 2 girls, whom he identified as Tracy Hahn and Beasley. According to Barentine, the man forced they out of the car on Herring Avenue. A confrontation took place between the man and they as they tried to escape. After putting they in the trunk, Barentine reported seeing something in the man's hands just before hearing 2 gunshots. The man then returned to the car, and Barentine drove him away from the scene before heading home. In a different account, Barentine confessed to investigators that he knew the man he had given a ride to and identified him as his neighbor. Notably, Barentine lived less than a mile from where the police found the victims' bodies. Johnny Barentine was named the prime suspect in the murders of Beasley and Tracy Hahn, but his story raised several red flags. He failed to mention any sexual activity that would explain the semen found on Beasley's clothing and body. Additionally, the neighbor he implicated had a solid alibi for the time of the crime. Barentine's appearance in his mugshot also seemed suspicious, as he looked startled and disheveled, as if he had just been awoken from a deep sleep. Despite these inconsistencies, police initially believed they had the right person. However, Barentine soon confessed that he had fabricated his entire story to collect the reward money. Surprisingly, at the preliminary hearing on September 21, Alabama Bureau of Investigation agent Charles Huggins testified that Barentine was able to accurately describe her clothing and other details consistent with the crime scene, which suggested that he may have had some knowledge of the events. After his arrest, Barentine was held in the Dale County Jail in Ozark without the possibility of bail. At a bond hearing on October 18, Barentine claimed he was not involved in the killings. He told the judge that he had not picked up a tattooed man and had not witnessed anything on the night of the murders. According to Barentine, he had gone to the BP station around 11 p.m. to buy milk for his child and later fabricated a story to collect the reward money. The judge denied Barentine's request for bond, and he returned to jail. Despite the challenges, Barentine's family continued to support him. They gave interviews to the media, stating that he was innocent and incapable of harming anyone. Barentine's lawyer, Bill Kimmons, also maintained his client's innocence, stating that the prolonged interrogation had taken a toll on him, causing him to become entangled in his own web of deceit. During police questioning, Barentine was not informed that he was free to leave or use the bathroom at any time. His defense team highlighted that he had limited education, having only completed the 7th grade and part of the 8th grade, and was in special education classes, which suggested he lacked the capacity to plan a complex crime. He was eventually released from jail on December 17, 1999, when DNA evidence revealed that his DNA did not match the semen found on the victim's body and clothing. In January 2000, a grand jury in Dale County declined to indict Barentine, effectively clearing him as a suspect in the double murder. The investigation suffered a setback after Barentine's clearance, and the methods used by investigators were criticized. Questions arose about the Ozark Police Department's ability to handle the case. Despite this, the police still had several potential suspects under consideration. A Michigan man was considered a key suspect due to his proximity to the scene and suspicious behavior. He was in the area on the night of the murders and attended a party near where Beasley's car was found. Within days, he left town, raising suspicions. Investigators made 3 trips to Michigan to interview him, but he was unable to provide a solid alibi for hours on the night of the murder. Police were initially interested in two key leads: a person of interest whose DNA didn't match the crime scene, and a driver of a small white pickup truck captured on surveillance footage. The video showed the truck at the gas pumps at the same time the victims, Beasley and Tracy Hahn, were nearby at the payphone. However, no record of a gas purchase existed, and the video was of poor quality, making it impossible to clearly identify the driver or determine if anyone got out of the truck. The police released a photo of the truck a month later, asking for the public's help in identifying the driver. Unfortunately, no one came forward with any information, and the lead eventually disappeared. The investigation's last lead was a man from Mississippi who had been arrested in Jones County on an outstanding warrant for possessing drug paraphernalia. He had been visiting relatives in Ozark, but departed 2 days after the murders. Investigators wanted to question him, but ultimately, he provided no significant information. Due to lack of evidence, they were forced to release him. In March 2000, a woman came forward, claiming she heard screams and 2 gunshots near Highway 123 South, just inside the city limits, on the night of the murders. She admitted she had been scared to report it earlier. Police searched the area based on her description and found a 9mm bullet, the same type used to kill they. However, the bullet's brand did not match the brand of the bullet shell casing found on Tracy's body. The unspent bullet found no useful markings for forensic comparison to other evidence, ruling out another potential lead in the case. Despite this and other dead ends over the years, investigators remained hopeful for a DNA match. As the families of Beasley and Tracy Hahn tried to move on with their lives, the case eventually went cold. Years later, new information rekindled the investigation. In 2015, a bombshell accusation shook the case. Rena, an auxiliary police officer with the Ozark Police Department, came forward and publicly accused a fellow officer of murdering Beasley and Tracy Hahn and implicated others in a cover-up. Rena made several disturbing allegations regarding the Ozark Police Department. She claimed that on July 31, 1999, a police officer stopped Beasley and demanded to know the location of cassette tapes containing incriminating conversations about the police department's involvement in cocaine trafficking. According to Rena, this confrontation led to the tragic murder of 2 innocent teenagers. Rena further alleged that she was threatened by multiple law enforcement officials who knew the identity of the murderer but helped cover up the crime by destroying evidence. Specifically, Rena accused 3 officers, Gary Butch Whittington, Rex Tipton, and Eddie Henderson, of harassing and intimidating her. She also implicated the former police chief, Tony Spivey, who led the original investigation, in the cover-up. However, Rena declined to reveal the name of the officer she believed was directly responsible for the murders. American journalist John B. Carroll wrote that the officer likely assumed they girls planned to use the tapes as evidence in a court case set for August 2, 1999, just over a day after their murders. Carroll also reported that Rena was brutally beaten with a baseball bat after coming forward, which prevented her from revealing the actual killer. Law enforcement officials accused by Rena denied any involvement in the murders of Beasley and Tracy Hahn. Due to a lack of physical evidence, none of the officials were ever formally named as suspects in the case. Despite this, online allegations against them spread quickly on true crime websites and social media. As a result, Keith Coffin, Rex Tipton, Tony Spivey, Eddie Henderson, and Gary Butch Whittington from the Ozark, Alabama Police Department sued Rena Crum, John B. Carroll for defamation in 2016. The case was later dismissed in 2018. In May 2016, Rena Crum was convicted of harassing Beasley's sister over several years and received a suspended sentence and a $250 fine. Despite an extensive investigation that spanned 2 decades, including numerous interviews and DNA samples, authorities were unable to identify a suspect. It wasn't until 2019 that advances in DNA technology finally led to a breakthrough. In March 2019, investigators sent the DNA evidence found on Beasley's body in clothes to a specialized lab in Virginia called Parabon Nano. The lab used public genealogy databases to analyze the DNA and found a match, leading them to identify a suspect named Coley McCraney. McCraney, 45, was not previously a suspect in the 1999 murders of Beasley and Tracy Hallett, but DNA evidence now implicated him in the crime. McCraney was born in Alabama and graduated from Carroll High School in Ozark in 1992. During his time in high school, he was an athlete and also served as the president of the library club. After graduation, he enlisted in the U.S. Air Force and served from 1993 to 1997. In 1992, McCraney was married, but they separated 2 years later. They eventually divorced. His ex-wife filed a complaint with the Air Force in 1994, alleging that McCraney had assaulted her. McCraney later remarried in 2001 and had children with his second wife. In 1998, he was found to have failed to pay child support, but otherwise, he had no significant criminal record over the past 20 years. McCraney worked as a truck driver throughout his career, employed by several Alabama-based trucking companies over the years. More recently, he co-founded a church and worked as a bishop. At the time of the 1999 murders, Coley McCraney was 26 years old and living in Ozark, just 1 mile from where the bodies of Beasley and Tracy Hallett were found. Nearly 20 years later, on March 15, 2019, McCraney was arrested in Daleville, Alabama, following a traffic stop. During his subsequent interview with police, McCraney claimed to not know the victims. However, the investigators did not reveal any motive for the murders. The news of McCraney's arrest sent shockwaves through the Ozark community, including its police chief, Marlon Walker, who had attended school with McCraney. As the case seemed to be finally unraveling, a new development emerged. Rena Crum, a 53-year-old woman who had previously accused the Ozark Police Department of covering up the murder, withdrew her allegations during an August 2022 hearing. McCraney, 49, is currently in Dale County Jail awaiting trial on 5 counts of capital murder for the shooting deaths of Beasley and Tracy Hallett. His bond was denied, and his trial is scheduled for April 17, 2023. The families of the victims expressed relief that the alleged killer has been apprehended, but they still face the difficult process of reliving painful memories during the trial. McCraney was ultimately found guilty of the murder and rape of Beasley and the murder of Hallett. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Els van Doren. Els van Doren was a 38-year-old Belgian woman married to Jan de Wilde, a jeweler. Together, they had 2 children, Vincent and Carol. Although he worked in his family's jewelry store, Els van Doren's real passion had been skydiving. She initially took up the sport with her husband in 1994, but she quickly overcame his interest as her passion for skydiving grew. Els van Doren was an experienced skydiver with 2,300 jumps. Every weekend and holiday, she spent time skydiving. In 1998, she began formation jumping, and in 2001, she became a member of an all-female skydiving team called the Divas. The team competed at the World Skydiving Championships in 2003. However, Els van Doren had to leave the team in 2004 due to a herniated disc. After recovering, Els van Doren decided to skydive more for fun than for competition. She joined the Swartberg Parachute Club, where she met a fellow skydiver and close friend, Els Babs Klotmans, who was 26 years old and a school teacher. To avoid confusion within the club, Els van Doren suggested the nickname Babs for her young friend. Both women were acquainted with Marcel Summers, a member of the Swartberg Parachute Club. As Els van Doren, Babs, and Marcel became acquainted, Els Van Doren found herself developing a strong relationship with Marcel, which eventually became a romantic relationship. Even though she was married, Els Van Doren was able to keep her relationship with Marcel a secret because her family was used to her spending weekends at the skydiving club. She often visited Marcel's apartment on weekends without arousing her husband's suspicion. What Els Van Doren didn't know was that she not only shared a name with Babs, they also shared a man, Marcel. Unbeknownst to both Els Van Doren and Babs, Marcel had been secretly hooking up with both of them, devising a plan to manage his time with each of them. Friday was for Babs, while Saturday was for Els Van Doren. This arrangement worked for Marcel for a while, but it didn't last long. On Friday evening, November 10, 2006, something unexpected happened. As planned, Babs went to Marcel's residence for a weekly meeting, but what she didn't know was that Els Van Doren had also decided to surprise Marcel that night. Babs and Marcel had just finished dinner and were returning to their apartment when they met Els Van Doren, who was waiting outside the door. That night, Babs did not sleep in Marcel's bed as expected. Instead, she slept in a sleeping bag on the living room floor, while Marcel and her friend, Els Van Doren, were in the bedroom. While in the living room, Babs noticed Els Van Doren's parachute and skydiving equipment nearby. Feeling hurt and betrayed by her friend's actions, Babs acted in a way that would ultimately have devastating consequences. On November 18, 2006, 12 members of the skydiving club, including Els Van Doren, Babs, and Marcel, boarded a flight over Flanders. Their plan was to jump in a four-person formation from 13,000 feet with Tom, another skydiver. During the jump, they would hold hands before leaving and opening their parachutes. Els Van Doren and Tom jumped out of the plane as scheduled, but Babs seemed to have jumped a little late. As they free fell, Babs struggled to keep up with the group. At an altitude of 9,000 feet, Marcel, Els Van Doren, and Tom decided to break formation to safely open their parachutes. That's when they realized something serious was going on. Els Van Doren's parachute wouldn't open when she pulled the rope. Remaining calm, Els Van Doren recalled her emergency training and remembered a previous experience where she had successfully deployed her reserve parachute after the main parachute failed. Els Van Doren was plummeting towards the ground at a speed of 200 kilometers per hour, with only 20 seconds to perform an emergency maneuver to ensure a safe landing. Despite her best efforts, pulling the reserve parachute cord had no effect and the parachute could not open. In a state of panic, Els Van Doren continued to pull both the main parachute rope and the backup parachute rope. But nothing happened. Marcel, at an altitude of 800 meters, witnessed Els Van Doren's desperate struggle from afar. He was 300 meters above Els Van Doren, who was only 500 meters above the ground, and he knew something was wrong because her parachute had not opened. However, he was powerless to intervene and could only watch in horror. In a last-ditch effort, Els Van Doren tried to untangle her parachute in hopes of activating it, but it was too late. Her life ended. Meanwhile, in Upavbeek town, a woman was drying laundry in her garden when she heard a loud noise. She looked up and saw a person falling from the sky with a parachute, heading straight for her garden. This sight was not unusual as her house was located near a skydiving club and its landing strip. She suddenly noticed a piece of white cloth stuck to her bush. When she got closer, she saw a person lying in the bushes. She immediately called her husband, who was working in the garden, and they quickly called emergency services. Meanwhile, Marcel had landed safely and was desperately searching for Els Van Doren. He spotted an ambulance and followed it to the scene where Els Van Doren had landed. As he rushed towards her, he was restrained by the emergency team so they could work. Despite their efforts to resuscitate her, Els Van Doren died. Marcel emphasized that Els Van Doren's parachute was inoperable, pointing out that it was unusual for both the main and reserve parachutes to fail to open. He then contacted Els Van Doren's husband, Jan, to tell him the news. Jan rushed to his wife's side, while Tom and Babs returned to the skydiving club to break the tragic news to the other members. The news was heartbreaking. Babs was overcome with grief, falling to her knees and crying in pain. Els Van Doren's husband, Jan, went to the skydiving club to pick up her belongings. When he arrived, he met Babs, who offered to help him. However, Jan found it strange that Babs seemed to stand still with a strange grin on her face. She walked towards the dressing room with Jan following, but then suddenly locked the door, leaving Jan outside. After a long wait, Babs finally walked out carrying Els Van Doren's belongings. At the scene of the accident, police found Els Van Doren's parachute and helmet. The helmet had a camera that recorded her final jump. An autopsy was performed to see if Els Van Doren's death was caused by any internal cause. Results showed no signs of alcohol or drugs, leading investigators to conclude that her death was a murder or suicide. This conclusion was based on the severe fractures and internal bleeding caused by the fall. Els Van Doren's family suspected that she might have been murdered by someone in her own skydiving club, someone who knew how parachutes worked. As a result, club members were asked not to attend her funeral, but some of Els Van Doren's close friends chose to ignore this request. The family's suffering became even greater when police revealed that Els Van Doren had a secret affair with Marcel Summers that lasted more than 5 years. Jan was especially hurt when he learned that some of his club members knew about the affair, people he considered friends, but they all had kept quiet. What was even more painful was that Els Van Doren had told her clubmates that she had divorced her husband, which was not true. Els Van Doren had passed away just 1 day before her child Carol's 15th birthday. At the funeral, Carol gave a heartfelt speech, recalling how her family had prevented her mother from skydiving. They had longed for her to be with them, but Carol also admitted that her mother had been a unique person who wouldn't have been happy if she had given up what she loved. After the funeral, police began investigating the incident with Els Van Doren's reserve parachute. They sent a skydiving expert to check the parachute and look for abnormalities. Experts quickly discovered a critical problem: the pilot chute, a small auxiliary parachute that helped deploy the main or reserve parachute, was missing. Obviously, someone had deliberately removed it. Experts also discovered that the main parachute activation cord and one of the cords connecting to the emergency parachute had been cut. During the final review of body cam footage of Els Van Doren's fatal skydiving accident, an unidentified piece of red fabric was seen in front of her. Investigators were unable to identify the object as part of Els Van Doren's equipment. They therefore asked OPLAB residents to thoroughly search their garden and surrounding area for the piece of red cloth and warned them to handle it carefully if found, as it could be potential evidence containing the DNA of the person responsible for sabotaging Els Van Doren's parachute. Unfortunately, no one was able to find the piece of fabric. A week after Els Van Doren's death, a surprising discovery was made when Babs found the pilot chute. According to Babs, she had discovered the parachute hanging from a tree while driving between OPLAB and Genk on the way back from Marcel's apartment. Instead of contacting the police directly, she told Marcel about the discovery. Marcel then called the police, who arrived at the location and found Babs visibly shaken and emotional. The police were skeptical of Babs' story, as they found it unusual that she had stumbled upon the pilot chute. Babs insisted it had been just a coincidence, explaining that she had taken a different route home and had been delayed by a slow-moving tractor. She said this delay had caused her to look up and see the parachute hanging about 20 meters above her, which she interpreted as a sign from Els Van Doren. The police were suspicious because they knew that only investigators knew that the pilot had been missing. At that time, 3 people were the main suspects in Els Van Doren's suspected murder case: her husband Jan, her lover Marcel, and her friend Babs. Police searched Marcel's residence and eventually identified him as a suspect. They later also cleared Jan as a suspect. They then searched Babs' home and confiscated items such as her phone, laptop, and diary. In her diary, she had written down her feelings following the advice of her psychiatrist. Later, Els Klotmans, also known as Babs, was questioned by the police about her relationship with Marcel and what had happened to Els van Doorn. During the interrogation, Babs insisted she had had nothing to do with Els van Doorn's parachute. She blamed Marcel, claiming that he had often taken care of Els van Doorn's equipment when she stayed at his place on the weekends, or blamed Jan, claiming that Els van Doorn had often left her belongings at his house during the week. After the initial interrogation, Babs was released and went home. However, she did not appear for a second interview scheduled for December 20, 2006. It was later discovered that that morning she had tried to take her own life by drinking a combination of sleeping pills and antidepressants. Her mother had found her unresponsive and immediately took her to the hospital for emergency treatment. Before attempting suicide, Babs had written letters to loved ones expressing her struggle to cope with the loss of her close friend and the extreme stress of being a suspect in a murder case. After recovering, Babs had been admitted to a psychiatric hospital for 15 days for close observation. This had not been her first attempt at self-harm, as she had previously been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and depression. Marcel ended their relationship, believing her actions had been more a call for attention than an actual attempt to commit suicide. He thought she had taken the pill just before her mother had been due to return home, suggesting her main goal had been to divert attention from suspicion of involvement in the murder of Els van Doorn. Marcel thought the police had been trying to track down Babs and arrest her based on her lies. While still under psychiatric care, Babs had been arrested on January 11, 2007, as a suspect in the murder of Els van Doorn. When Babs appeared in court on January 19, 2007, authorities decided that she would be detained while the investigation was ongoing. Authorities asked Babs to take a polygraph test, but she refused and it was never taken. A thorough examination of Els van Doorn's parachute equipment had showed that someone had deliberately cut the parachute cord with scissors. The investigation revealed that the person responsible might have been right-handed. Babs spent 3 months in prison by March 2007, having to endure many interrogations. During questioning, she denied any wrongdoing but admitted sending anonymous letters to Els van Doorn. The letter affirmed that Els van Doorn's actions towards her family were wrong. Jan found the letter, but he interpreted it as a criticism of Els van Doorn's frequent absences due to parachuting. However, Babs' intention had been to warn Els van Doorn to end her relationship with Marcel. Babs also confessed to calling Marcel anonymously, especially when he had been with Els van Doorn. She had intended to threaten them. Investigators analyzed Babs' automatic activation device, AAD, and discovered that Babs had jumped with the rest of the team and deployed her parachute beforehand. This supposedly allowed Babs to witness events unfold from above and monitor where Els van Doorn's parachute would land. Babs could have landed and retrieved the parachute later. Babs' trial in the murder of Els van Doorn began on September 24, 2010. Babs had been quickly arrested. The prosecution felt confident that they had enough evidence to prove Babs had committed murder. They believed Babs had been motivated by jealousy because she had discovered her lover, Marcel Summers, had been having an affair with her best friend, Els van Doorn. Babs had previously told investigators that she knew Marcel preferred Els van Doorn to her. The prosecution argued that Babs had wanted to eliminate Els van Doorn as a rival. However, Babs' defense argued that the prosecution's case had been based on circumstantial evidence and unproven allegations. During the trial, Babs claimed that she had not seen a future with Marcel and only had an intimate relationship with him because of her low self-esteem. She even suggested that Els van Doorn's daughter, Carol, might have wanted to harm her mother for being away for the weekend. However, despite her efforts to manipulate the jury and shift blame, the judge's verdict prevailed. On October 20, 2010, Babs had been convicted of murdering her friend Els Van Doren and received a 30-year prison sentence. During the trial, Babs, steadfastly maintaining her innocence, had been closely monitored to prevent her from harming herself again. She later filed an appeal claiming that the police had interrogated her without a lawyer. In May 2011, her appeal was dismissed. In June 2022, after serving 12.5 years in prison, Babs was conditionally released after a third appeal and is now free. It is a pity that Els Van Doren had suffered a tragic fate and that her family had suffered immense pain when the truth had been revealed. Our sincerest condolences go out to the family and loved ones of Els Van Doren, who will be deeply missed. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Cody Johnson. Cody Johnson was born on May 8, 1989, in San Jose, California, where he developed a strong bond with his mother, Cher Johnson. In 2002, they relocated to Kalispell, a small tourist town in Flathead Valley, situated between Lake Kalispell and Glacier National Park. During his childhood in Kalispell, Cody spent most of his time exploring the outdoors, driving on long trails with friends, and nurturing his lifelong passion for cars. Those who knew Cody, including friends and family, described him as down-to-earth, charismatic, selfless, and genuine. He was the type of person who would go out of his way to help others once he got to know them. Cody's passion for cars eventually turned into a successful business. He started by modifying and souping up cars for racing in his teenage years, which later expanded to include commercial vehicles. As a custom commercial car builder, Cody worked with his uncle and friends at Nomad Communications, where his childhood best friend, Cameron Fredrickson, was his boss. With a thriving career and a strong support system, the only thing missing in Cody's life was a romantic partner to share it with. At the age of 23, Cody was searching for a lifelong partner. He confided in his friends about his desire to marry a woman from a religious background. On Halloween 2011, he met Jordan, the woman who would transform his life forever. Jordan Lynn Graham was born in August 1991 and had spent her entire life in Kalispell with her family. She was deeply devoted to her faith and attended the Faith Baptist Church, where she babysat and worked with families. Her friendships were all rooted in the church, and her ultimate dream was to become a stay-at-home mom and raise a family. When Cody and Jordan met on Halloween 2011, they quickly clicked. Initially, Jordan was shy, but as they conversed, she opened up. She shared her aspirations of starting a family and her passion for nature and the outdoors. Although Jordan took a liking to Cody, she was only 20 years old at the time and wasn't ready to embark on a serious relationship. They went on a few casual dates, but ultimately remained friends. Cody's pursuit of Jordan changed everything. To get close to her, he started attending her church, First Baptist, and socialized with the same people she did. Before long, their casual friendship turned into something more, although it was more significant for one of them than the other. In November 2011, they officially began dating, and Cody fell deeply in love with Jordan. Cody said that he adored her and wanted to spend all his time with her. Even after just a few weeks of dating, Cody was convinced he wanted to marry Jordan, despite her intention to remain chaste until marriage. Those close to the couple observed that Jordan didn't share the same level of passion. Some attributed this to her shy nature, while others were concerned about the imbalance in their relationship. It was noted that the couple rarely displayed affection in public, never holding hands or flirting. Many of Jordan's friends were surprised when she accepted Cody's proposal in December 2012, a year after they started dating. They thought she wasn't ready for marriage, but they were happy for her anyway. Jordan announced her engagement on Instagram, showing off her new ring with the caption, "He proposed, best early Christmas present ever, and a smiley face. The marriage was set to take place on June 29, 2013, and the planning process began immediately. Both Cody and Kimberly Martinez, Jordan's best friend and matron of honor, were heavily involved in the preparations. However, Jordan seemed to be the most enthusiastic about planning the wedding. She even went as far as to commission a professional songwriter, Elizabeth Shee, to write a song for the occasion. In hindsight, the lyrics of the song appear eerily prophetic. Whenever Kimberly or others brought up the topic of what it would be like to be married to Cody, however, Jordan's demeanor would suddenly change. She would repeatedly ask Kimberly if she was making the right decision, and on her wedding day, her true feelings about the marriage were evident. She was visibly nervous, avoiding eye contact with Cody and looking down frequently. When it came time for the wedding photos, she seemed reluctant to make eye contact with her husband. Despite her initial hesitation, Jordan appeared to have overcome her doubts by the time of their first dance and was fully focused on Cody. However, this period of happiness would not last long. The morning after the wedding, she sent a text to her friend from their honeymoon hotel. Despite being married, she had refused her husband's advances on their wedding night and for the next 6 nights. She confided in her friend that she knew he would want to do things she was not ready for, and that she was trying the old that her period started excuse that night, hoping it would work because if she was forced into anything, she would panic. The reality was that Jordan had a deep-seated fear of sex. A mix of her religious beliefs and true feelings about Cody made her anxious about intimacy with him. The tension built until July 7th, 8 days after the wedding. Cody had planned to go golfing with friends, but he called it off at the last minute because Jordan had a surprise waiting for him after church, followed by some quiet time at the lake. That evening, the couple joined a few friends for dinner at the local Dairy Queen. After dinner, Cody went home with Jordan, and that was the last time anyone saw him. Cameron Fredrickson was the first to realize Cody was missing. As a reliable and punctual employee, Cody's absence was unusual. When he failed to show up well into the workday, Cameron decided to visit Cody's new home, which he had bought with Jordan before their wedding. After knocking for a while with no response, Cameron grew concerned and let himself in. Finding the house empty, he searched for any clues that might explain where Cody and Jordan could have gone, but his search was largely unsuccessful. Cameron's concern turned to fear when he found Cody's phone in the garage, which was unusual because Cody always had his phone with him. This discovery led Cameron to suspect that something might have happened to him. After making several phone calls, Cameron realized that no one had seen Cody since they had dinner at Dairy Queen. At 8:30, Cameron went to the police station to file a missing persons report. The authorities took the case seriously, partly due to Cameron's distress. Officer Chaz Zimmerman was one of the first officers to question Cameron, and he found it strange that Cody's boss had reported him missing instead of his wife. Later that day, Kimberly finally managed to contact Jordan, who explained that she had seen Cody leave with some friends in a black car with Washington plates. According to Jordan, Cody had received a disturbing phone call on their way back from the restaurant, which made him upset. Jordan decided to give him some space, and that was the last time she saw him. Later that night, she went to the garage to get her phone charger that she supposedly left in their car. On her way back from the car, she received a text from Cody. He told her that he had received a message saying that someone was going to go for a ride with some of his out-of-town buddies who were visiting. Cody mentioned that he had no idea who they were, but the person always told him one thing. When his friends came to visit, he would take them to Glacier Park. She informed the police about her previous conversation with Kimberly and provided additional information. She said she didn't know any of the men involved and denied that they had a fight that night. When questioned about Cody's disappearance, Jordan suggested that he might have gone joyriding with friends from out of town. The police asked her why she didn't report him missing, and she explained that she didn't want to worry him by filing a report if he was just going to return within a few hours. 48 hours after Cody vanished, his and Jordan's friends and family gathered at their home, perplexed by Cody's behavior. It was out of character for him to abandon his wife without a word about his whereabouts. Despite this, Jordan stuck to her story until Kimberly confronted her. As the impromptu meeting dragged on, Jordan's discomfort grew increasingly apparent. Eventually, she became so agitated that she flung her wedding ring across the room. Some thought it was Kimberly's odd way of coping, but she was convinced there was something else going on. She called her friend when she got home. The next day, Jordan was called into the station and confronted by the officers about her inconsistent testimony. The officer told her that there were inconsistencies in what she was saying compared to other information he had already gathered. Jordan acknowledged this. Shear Johnson saw police with Cody's phone records, hoping they'd find a lead. They questioned a man Cody called, but he had an alibi. His wife was in labor during Cody's disappearance. The police refocused on Jordan, but her story didn't add up. Then a mysterious email arrived, claiming Cody was dead. "Hello, Jordan, I'm Tony. No need to look for Cody anymore. He's gone." Jordan approached Hannah with a somber expression, holding an email, and relayed the news about Cody, as told by Carmen Tony 607. According to the message, Cody had allegedly slipped and fallen off a cliff in Glacier National Park while with some mysterious friends. Hannah was devastated when she read the email and had to urge a lethargic Jordan to report the incident to the police. Instead of calming their suspicions, the anonymous email only fueled the paranoia of the police investigation. The email's convenient arrival, providing the exact information they had been desperately seeking, and its advice to call off the search, raised more questions than answers. What troubled Detective Corey Clark even more, however, was Jordan's unsettling lack of emotion in response to the message. She appeared unfazed, showing no signs of distress, despite the email basically confirming her husband's death. Jordan decided to search for Cody in Glacier National Park, accompanied by her close friends and family, based on the information in the email. During the drive to the park, Hannah noticed Jordan was in an inexplicably cheerful mood, waving her hand out the window. After finding nothing on the first day, they resumed their search on the second day. It was then that Jordan suddenly discovered Cody's body. "We stood there, and she said, 'I think he's down there.' I responded, 'What do you mean? Why would he go down there? This wall is here for a reason,'" Hannah recalled, still puzzled by Jordan's certainty. The coroner's examination revealed that the majority of the damage from the fall was to his head and arms. The loss devastated Cody's family and friends, but Jordan felt relieved, according to Hannah. With the discovery of the body, the police investigation would come to an end. However, the police still had one major unanswered question: who was Carmen Tony 607? During the initial questioning, Jordan directed the police to Tony Stalkup, a fellow car enthusiast and acquaintance of Cody's. Although Tony hadn't seen Cody in several months, he was concerned enough to grant the police full access to his accounts. Unfortunately, the search did not yield the email address they were looking for, and neither Jordan's nor Cody's phone records provided any significant leads. As a result, the police had to obtain a subpoena from Google to uncover the IP address associated with Carmen Tony 607. While awaiting the arrival of the information, the police re-interviewed Cody's family and friends. During this process, Kimberly finally disclosed to the police Jordan's fragile mental state in the period leading up to the marriage. She revealed that Jordan had asked her on several occasions if she should marry Cody, and expressed her horror and fear at the idea of having sex with him. Jordan also confided that she regretted marrying Cody and wished she could undo everything. When Kim advised her to be honest with Cody about her feelings, Jordan responded in a message saying that she should be happy, but she wasn't, and if she told him, it was going to break his heart. 2 days before Cody disappeared, she typed that he had held her down the other night and had been in her face. Then on July 7th, they uncovered that she had intended to talk to him and was terrified of how he would react. Later that day, she ended up at Kim's house and told her how the talk with Cody had gone. She said it had not gone well. Cody had gotten really angry and freaked out, and she had decided to leave so that he could cool off. She had spent the night at her stepparents' home. When the police learned about this, Jordan became an even more likely suspect. The information from Google arrived around the same time and confirmed that Carmen Tony 607's email address was generated from a computer at her stepfather's home. A short interview with each member of the Graham family painted Jordan as the creator, but that was not damning evidence enough. Cody and Jordan's cell phone records were. The cell towers put them at Glacier National Park the night of Cody's disappearance. CCTV cameras also captured pictures of the couple entering Glacier Park at 9:17 p.m. after she denied being with her husband that night. On July 18, 2013, the police questioned Jordan, and when they presented her with evidence, she became emotional and tearful. She finally shared her account of what happened on July 8th with the detective. According to Jordan, she and Cody had a heated argument after she confessed her marital concerns to him. They decided to take a trip to Glacier National Park to calm down, heading for the Loop Trail. Jordan explained her actions, stating that she thought she was overwhelmed by her emotions, feeling pressured, angry, and experiencing every possible emotion all at once. In the heat of the moment, she turned around and pushed him off the hill, causing him to fall face first down the slope. The detectives were intrigued when Jordan mentioned a blindfold, and they tried to link it to a stray scarf discovered at the base of the cliff. However, Jordan declined to provide more information, and despite their efforts, no concrete evidence was found to implicate her in the crime. Throughout the investigation, Jordan consistently claimed that Cody's death was an accident, not a deliberate act of violence. When questioned about pushing her husband Cody off the bridge, she explained that he had turned his back to her, facing the cliff, and that was when she approached him and pushed him in the back with both hands, sending him over the edge. Jordan also admitted to creating the Carmen Tony 607 profile at her stepfather's house and sending the messages. Following her confession, Jordan left the police station without being charged, remaining a free woman. The police did not file charges against her until July 22nd, at Cody's funeral, where she was seen texting on her phone. This act of disrespect completely eliminated any remaining sympathy for Jordan. Rumors swirled that Jordan had murdered her husband Cody to escape their marriage, the only way to retract her decision without humiliating herself and her family. If Cody were dead, Jordan wouldn't need to file for divorce. Her demeanor at his funeral only fueled these rumors. People started questioning whether Jordan ever truly loved Cody. Jordan was charged with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and making false statements. After reviewing her case, the jury added a charge of premeditated first-degree murder. Her trial began on December 9, 2013. From the start, the prosecution aggressively attacked Jordan, and after a few days, her situation looked bleak. They dismantled her story, raising crucial questions about why she lied to Cody's friends and family, feigning innocence and remorse. The testimony from Cody's loved ones hurt her case, portraying her as a heartless wife who murdered her husband to avoid intimacy. Her defense attempted to claim self-defense, but it seemed unlikely to succeed. Jordan opted for a plea deal, agreeing to a 30-year prison sentence without parole in exchange for the prosecution dropping the first-degree murder charge. However, before sentencing, she changed her mind and attempted to withdraw her plea when she learned the prosecution intended to pursue premeditated first-degree murder, which carried a maximum 50-year sentence. The decision rested with U.S. District Judge Donald Malloy, who had to decide whether to uphold her original plea or initiate a new trial. On December 13, 2013, Jordan Lynn Graham received a 30-year and 5-month prison sentence and was ordered to pay a $16,907 fine. Her case was not reopened or reviewed. The federal prosecution aimed to make an example with her case. Jordan will remain in prison until she reaches the age of at least 52. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Christy Wilson. Born on January 10, 1978 in San Jose, California, Christy Lynn Wilson grew up to be a standout athlete and student. After graduating from Gunderson High School, she earned a business degree from California State University, Chico. Christy landed a job at a tech company near Sacramento and spent her free time playing blackjack at a local casino, where she met her boyfriend, Danny Berlando. According to her mother, Deborah Wilson Boyd, and her stepfather, Patrick Boyd, Christy was a bright and accomplished young woman. Christy's family and friends described her relationship with Danny as harmonious, and they thought the couple had a promising future together. However, things took a turn for the worse after they relocated to Sacramento together. Christy was often seen with bruises on her body, but she refused to talk about how she got them. In addition to her troubled personal life, Christy was struggling with her career due to the high-tech crisis. She lost her job and was forced to return to her parents' home in San Jose. Later, she received a job offer in San Francisco and decided to make a fresh start. On October 4, 2005, Christy traveled to Sacramento to collect her remaining belongings. 2 days later, on October 6, Danny Berlando contacted Christy's parents to inform them that she had gone missing. He claimed to have already checked with all local jails and hospitals and reached out to her friends prior to notifying them. The authorities were subsequently alerted about Christy Wilson's disappearance. According to Danny, Christy visited his apartment on October 4th and had dinner with his family that night. Afterwards, she went to the Thunder Valley Casino, which is the last time Danny saw her. It wasn't surprising that Danny went to the family dinner alone because his family didn't like Christy. Similarly, Christy's family didn't like Danny due to suspecting he had abused her, as she sometimes had bruises on her body. Patrick Boyd, Christy's stepfather, loved her like his own daughter and was outraged when he learned about the domestic violence. He wanted to confront Danny, but Christy's mother, Deborah, intervened to stop him. Danny Berlando was 31 years old when Christy disappeared. At the time, he had recently lost his job as a car salesman about a month prior to Christy's disappearance. Neighbors had previously reported to the police that they had heard Christy screaming loudly after a fight between the couple, but they had reconciled shortly after the incident. As a result, Danny was the prime suspect when Christy went missing, and the fact that he waited nearly 48 hours to report her disappearance only increased the detectives' suspicions. They wondered if he had used this time to destroy any evidence. However, Danny cooperated fully with the investigation, allowing the police to examine his phone records, credit card activity, computer, apartment, and car. Despite being a suspect, no evidence of foul play was found implicating him. He also had an alibi, having attended a family dinner before reporting Christy's disappearance to the police. During this time, he had tried calling Christy 78 times, but she didn't answer. Detectives questioned Christy's friends and family, examining her phone and credit card records. There had been no banking activity since October 4th. Christy's parents and the police coordinated a search effort that included dogs, volunteers, and a police helicopter. The family appealed to the public to come forward with any information about Christy's location. Danny, who was trying to find Christy, visited the Thunder Valley Casino, but the staff didn't provide any useful leads. However, Danny did locate Christy's car, which was still parked in the casino's lot. When investigators arrived at the casino, they found Christy's car still parked, but this discovery only led to more questions. Since there was no evidence of a struggle or any other crime, it was unclear whether Christy had left the casino voluntarily, and if so, why she had left her car behind. In an effort to get some answers, detectives requested access to the CCTV footage both inside and outside the casino. Meanwhile, the police conducted another search of Christy and Danny's apartment, but this search yielded nothing. Christy's stepfather, Patrick, a police officer, organized a search of a nearby river, but nothing was found. Investigators turned their attention to Thunder Valley, using Christy's player's card to track her movements at the casino. The card revealed that Christy sat at a blackjack table around 11 p.m., where she interacted with a man who wasn't Danny Burlando. The two appeared to communicate, congratulating each other on wins and comforting each other on losses. During her 6-hour stay, cameras captured the man placing his hand on Christy's shoulder. Christy experienced a roller coaster of emotions that night. Initially, luck was on her side, and she counted cards well. However, as the night wore on, she began to lose. As she consumed more drinks, Christy became increasingly anxious and uncontrollable. Eventually, the casino staff asked her to leave, and when a staff member requested she step outside to calm down, the black-haired man intervened, saying, "Don't worry, I'll take care of this beauty." Shortly after, cameras recorded the man leaving the casino with Christy. During a visit to Thunder Valley, detectives discovered that casino employees had found a mobile phone under a blackjack table which belonged to Christy. This was an unfortunate discovery for the police, as they had hoped to locate Christy by tracing her phone's location. A more thorough examination of the CCTV footage revealed that Christy and her new acquaintance went to the parking lot together. Approximately 4 minutes later, a white car departed the parking lot, while Christy's vehicle remained in place. The investigators suspected that Christy might have left with the unknown man in his car. The key question for the police was whether Christy had done so voluntarily or if the man had coerced her into the vehicle. Using data from the player's card, detectives identified the man at the blackjack table as 53-year-old Mario Flavio Garcia, a resident of Auburn. Garcia was a family man with a wife, 2 sons, and a successful IT career. The white car seen in the CCTV footage was registered to him, making him the prime suspect in Christy Wilson's disappearance. Although Garcia appeared to be alone in his car when he left the parking lot, and Christy never reached her vehicle after leaving the casino, he stayed in the parking lot for 3 minutes and 41 seconds, suggesting something may have occurred between them during that time. As detectives dug deeper into Garcia's life, they found that he was a respected member of the beloved community and a football mentor. However, he also had a dark side that contradicted his wholesome image. About 25 years ago, he was arrested for abducting his former girlfriend, taking her to a remote location, and forcing her to have sexual relations with him at gunpoint. Following this, the charges were reduced to assault with a deadly weapon as part of a plea bargain, and Garcia received a relatively lenient sentence, striking a deal with the prosecutor's office that resulted in 18 months of probation. Mario Garcia's brush with the law didn't start with his attack on his ex-girlfriend. He was also in a tumultuous relationship with Lynette Smith a few years later. In 1979, Garcia, Lynette, and her mother Violet Davis spent Christmas together. After dinner, the three got into Lynette's car. That night, eyewitnesses reported to the police that a car had plunged into the river near Oakland Airport and sank. Garcia was the only survivor, and he told the police that Lynette was driving when the accident happened. However, detectives couldn't confirm who was behind the wheel. Violet Davis's body was found in the car, but it took a week to recover Lynette's body. The incident was ruled an accident, and no one was charged. When investigators reopened the case, they brought up Christy Wilson's disappearance with Garcia. He claimed he knew nothing about it, stating that they had parted ways after leaving a casino together. However, the CCTV footage couldn't corroborate his story because the camera was facing the other direction at the time. According to Garcia, he went home after saying goodbye to Christy, but his alibi later proved to be a lie. After reviewing the CCTV footage, police discovered that Garcia drove in the opposite direction from his house, contradicting his claim that he went straight home. Garcia told detectives he fell asleep at 8:30 a.m. and woke up to go to work, but his wife refused to cooperate with the investigation, leaving the detectives unable to confirm or deny his alibi. However, cell phone records revealed that Garcia's entire story was a fabrication. The records showed that he didn't go home immediately after leaving the casino. A call he made to his wife at 7:51 a.m. was traced to a cell tower located far from his house, contradicting his initial statement. Garcia also claimed to have arrived at work at 9 a.m., but a colleague reported that he was late, arriving around 10 a.m. Furthermore, investigators learned that the day after Christy Wilson's disappearance, Garcia showed up to work with scratches on his arm and a bruise under one eye. When questioned, he attributed the injuries to a fall from a tree he was pruning, but the investigators were skeptical of his explanation. The police asked a forensic expert to examine Mario Garcia's injuries. The expert, who had a lot of experience, noticed that the scratches on Garcia's face and body didn't match the kind of injuries you'd get from falling out of a tree. There were 4 parallel scratches on his face and 3 parallel scratches on the left side of his chest that caught the expert's attention. The expert knew that when people resist an attacker, a right-handed person will usually leave scratches on the left side of their chest, and Christy Wilson was right-handed. The police suspected Mario Garcia was involved in whatever happened to Christy, so they got a warrant to search his car, home, and computer. Remember, Garcia said he went home after saying goodbye to Christy in the parking lot, but as the forensic investigators searched his car, they started to think that Christy Wilson was probably already dead. The man thoroughly cleaned his car, including the interior, and even removed the mat from the trunk. However, he was unable to eliminate all traces of evidence. Initially, forensic experts detected a small, unremarkable spot on the car seat, which was later confirmed to be blood upon testing. Although the sample was not suitable for DNA analysis, it was a crucial discovery. Furthermore, the police found 2 long hairs and small blood splatters on the back door of the trunk. After a comparison, they determined that the hairs belonged to the missing Christy. Subsequent testing of the blood stains revealed the presence of DNA from both Mario and Christy. This evidence contradicted Mario's alibi that they had parted ways in the parking lot, suggesting a physical altercation between Garcia and Christy instead. After analyzing the history of his internet search queries, detectives discovered that Garcia had been looking for forensic toxicology data and had also visited a website detailing the use of date rape drugs, which can be secretly added to someone's drink. Investigators suspected that Christy might have been a random target and that Garcia could have drugged her drink while they sat together at the same table. Despite the fact that Christy's body had not been found, Mario Garcia was arrested and charged with kidnapping and murder. Throughout the ordeal, Garcia maintained his innocence, despite the mounting evidence against him. The trial began on September 11, 2006, with prosecutors presenting compelling evidence that Garcia had met Christy at the blackjack table, left the casino with her, attacked and killed her, and then hidden her body. At the trial, Garcia questioned the evidence, asking why the DNA on the door, allegedly belonging to Christy Wilson, was the only DNA sample found. He wondered why the DNA of his sons, his wife, and other people who had been in the car was not detected. Garcia argued that it was suspicious that only Christy Wilson's DNA was found, despite his efforts to clean the car, implying that the police must have planted the evidence. Garcia then defiantly stated that he would not ask for mercy, forgiveness, or show remorse, as he claimed to be innocent of Christy Wilson's murder. Despite his protestations, the jury ultimately found Mario Garcia guilty. On January 11, 2007, Mario Garcia was sentenced to 59 years to life in prison, but this was not the end of the story. Christy's family held out hope that after the sentencing, Garcia would finally reveal the location of her body but he refused to discuss it. As the years went by, Christy's family attempted to move on with their lives, but this was impossible after such a traumatic experience. Mario Garcia's repeated appeals only made things worse, keeping the family in a state of limbo. Although all his appeals were unsuccessful, they prevented Christy's family from finding closure. In 2018, Garcia changed his strategy, offering to reveal the body's location in exchange for early release from prison. Deborah Boyd, Christy's mother, briefly considered negotiating with him, but ultimately rejected the idea, saying, "This would be such a disgrace. He will not use my daughter's body as a bargaining chip." The police turned to Garcia's family for assistance. They were aware that Jean Garcia, Mario's ex-wife, had divorced him following his imprisonment. Over time, she began to suspect her ex-husband's involvement in Christy Wilson's disappearance and death, and eventually lost faith in him. The investigators also reached out to Garcia's sons, Chris and Andy, asking them to recollect any details from the period surrounding Christy's disappearance and the days preceding their father's arrest. The police sought to understand Mario's behavior during that time, wondering if there were any notable changes. Mario's son Chris recalled an important football game he had to attend. As he approached his dad, he noticed Mario working frantically on a tractor, his eyes wild with intensity as he hurriedly attended to tasks around the property. Chris wished his father could come watch him play, but Mario flatly refused, his tone unyielding. This response struck Chris as uncharacteristic of his dad. Investigators asked Chris to accompany them to his childhood home, which his family had lost in 2007. As they walked through the property, Chris pointed out the spot where he remembered seeing his father working on a tractor. The tractor was parked next to a detached garage, situated close to the road and only about 100 yards from Mario Garcia's house. The landscape had been altered to match the surrounding terrain, a feat that Mario had likely accomplished over the course of 4 or 5 days. Back in 2005, law enforcement officers searched Garcia's property using police dogs, but they didn't find anything. 15 years later, investigators decided to take a different approach. In August 2020, they hired a company specializing in ground-penetrating radar technology to scan Garcia's 5-acre property. The technicians thoroughly scanned the property, identifying 8 areas with voids or pockets beneath the surface. The first 2 areas scanned yielded nothing, but the third area, pointed out by the experts, was where Mario Garcia was digging with a tractor. It was there that the police found a skeleton. Further examination left no doubt. The remains were those of Christy Wilson, 15 years after her disappearance. Although the exact cause of her death remained unknown, the experts concluded that she had a broken arm and nose. After 15 years of working on the case, investigators traveled to Arizona to personally deliver the news to Deborah, Christy's mother. This emotional moment brought both sadness and joy to Christy's family, as they finally had the chance to bid a long-overdue farewell to their beloved daughter. At a press conference in Auburn, Placer County Sheriff Devin Bell announced that Christy Wilson's remains had been found, alongside the Wilson family and District Attorney Morgan Geer. Bell emphasized that this discovery was made without any assistance from Mario Garcia, a 67-year-old convicted murderer who had refused to cooperate and provide any information to bring closure to the family. Bell believes Garcia is where he deserves to be, in prison. Deborah Boyd, Christy's mother, expressed her gratitude for this announcement, saying it would bring peace to their family. "This is a peace we've been lacking, and we're thrilled to finally close this tormenting chapter and move forward with gratitude," she stated. Today marks an exceptional display of perseverance in police work that any victim's family could hope for. Mario Garcia passed away on December 24, 2020, due to pneumonia. Christy's family found solace in his death, although it's worth noting that Christy's remains were found on a property Garcia owned back in 2005. Notably, Garcia never admitted guilt. Hello friends, Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Tara Baker. Tara Baker was born on January 20th, 1977 in East Point, Georgia. Her parents divorced when she was young, and her mother later remarried. Tara had 2 brothers and a sister, making her the oldest of 4 siblings. From a very young age, Tara demonstrated a strong interest in the legal system and aspired to become either a lawyer or a judge. She would hold trials with her stuffed animals, make legal contracts with relatives, and frequently write letters to various politicians, including once complaining to the President of the United States that his speech had interrupted her favorite TV show. After graduating from high school, Tara attended Georgia College, where she graduated early in just 3 years, earning 2 bachelor's degrees in 1999. Tara then enrolled at the University of Georgia to complete her education. This university was one of the top law schools in the country and was located in a small town called Athens, just a few hours' drive from her parents' home, making it the perfect choice for Tara. Instead of living in a dorm again after college, Tara decided to rent off-campus housing. She chose a house split into 3 separate rooms, with 2 other university students renting the other rooms. One of these students was someone Tara knew well from college. For some time, Tara worked at a prestigious law firm in downtown Athens, which allowed her not only to cover rent and other expenses, but also to gain valuable experience in her future profession. In January 2001, when Tara was 23 and in her 2nd year, she spent a lot of time studying at the university library. The evening of January 18th was no exception, as she and her friend went to the library and spent several hours there. Her friend left for home around 7:30 p.m., while Tara decided to stay longer. At approximately 9:46 p.m., she called her friend from the library to check if she had gotten home safely and mentioned that she planned to head home in a few minutes. The next day, around 6 p.m., Tara's mother, Virginia Baker, received a phone call. At first, she thought someone was playing a prank on her because the caller identified themselves as a detective and asked if her daughter had ever been arrested, as they needed her fingerprints. Thinking it was a joke, Virginia hung up, but then she decided to call the Athens police station. To her surprise, they confirmed that she had indeed spoken to a real detective and informed her that there had been a fire at Tara's house. Still not fully understanding what was going on, Virginia asked to speak to her daughter, but the detective replied that they couldn't find her and that an unidentified body had been found in the house, which was why they needed Tara's fingerprints. The detective further explained that they had only been able to locate one of Tara's roommates, who was not home at the time of the fire, and the whereabouts of the other roommate and Tara were still unknown. Investigators believed that the body might belong to one of them. Virginia then asked to describe the room where the body was found, and the detective's response left her speechless. They said that the room was filled with antique stuff and that Tara had been collecting such items for years. Tara's family immediately drove to Athens, hoping it was all just a misunderstanding and that Tara was okay. When they arrived at the police station, they were kept waiting for a long time without any information. Several hours later, a detective finally informed them that the body found in the house belonged to Tara and that she had been murdered, not killed in the fire. The detective then said he was too tired to answer their questions before leaving, adding that Tara had left them a gift under her nails. Experts had found fragments of the perpetrator's skin, which might help identify him. Tara's relatives were left in a state of shock and despair upon receiving the news of her murder. Despite their pleas for more information, the police did not provide any further details. The family desperately tried to get some answers, but the detectives refused to share any information with them. Since then, the local police department has never contacted the family, and Tara's relatives had to persistently call and visit the station in a futile attempt to obtain any information. Eventually, they managed to piece together some of what had happened. Around 11 a.m. on January 19th, firefighters were called to Tara's address. After extinguishing the fire, they found a body inside, later identified as Tara Baker. Medical experts concluded that Tara had been murdered, her body showing signs of strangulation and stab wounds, and she had likely been assaulted. The fire had started after her death, leading investigators to believe that the perpetrator had set it to destroy evidence. However, Tara's parents were never able to get the police to show them the medical examiner's report or provide detailed information about the murder. Tara's family also learned that many pieces of evidence might have been destroyed by the firefighters, which is not uncommon in such cases. Their primary goal was to extinguish the blaze and potentially rescue any survivors, and they couldn't have known that there was a murder victim inside. The family also discovered that the investigators likely didn't secure the house after finding the body, allowing anyone to approach or even enter the crime scene. As Tara's relatives gathered these pieces of information, they not only encountered the police's reluctance to keep them informed about the investigation, but also faced constant rudeness and unprofessionalism. At one point, they even started recording their conversations with the police and filed complaints against the local investigators, but this led nowhere. They eventually decided to conduct their own investigation and reached out to a well-known criminologist who agreed to help them. However, the local police department agreed to show him the case materials only on the condition that he would not share any information or findings with anyone outside the investigation, including Tara's relatives. The family hadn't been able to obtain Tara's death certificate for 10 years. It was only after writing to the state governor that they finally received the document. But even then, the detailed cause of death was not listed. It simply stated multiple injuries. Despite all this, the police did continue their investigation, although there were many questionable moments in their actions, which we'll discuss a bit later. When firefighters extinguished the blaze and discovered Tara's body, they called the police, realizing it was a murder. Investigators searched for evidence at the crime scene, but the room was severely damaged by fire and water. As the family later found out, some surviving items were never examined for fingerprints. The police were able to determine that Tara's laptop was missing from her room. Considering it was 2001, the laptop was quite a bulky piece of tech, yet no other valuable items were taken. This raised doubts about the robbery gone wrong motive. There were no signs of forced entry, leading investigators to believe that Tara might have known her killer and let them in voluntarily. Although the fire and firefighting efforts had damaged the crime scene so much that it was difficult to be certain, both of Tara's roommates were out of town that evening, so she was home alone. Establishing the time of death was challenging, so medical experts estimated a time frame from 10 p.m. when Tara left the library to 11 a.m. when neighbors called the fire department. The crime likely occurred closer to the morning hours since the fire didn't need much time to spread. The police also found witnesses who saw a middle-aged white man running down the street that morning. It was unusual that he was only wearing a t-shirt and jeans, given that it was winter. They soon discovered that there had been a phone call to Tara's university a few days before the murder. The university had a procedure for students or faculty to request student information like phone numbers. A man who sounded heavily intoxicated called and asked for Tara Baker's phone number, but only managed to write it correctly on the 8th attempt. While this was highly suspicious, the man's identity was never determined. At the time of her murder, Tara had a boyfriend who became a person of interest from the very beginning. He provided an alibi that was confirmed, yet the police were reluctant to remove him from their list of suspects, even after verifying his alibi. They treated him with suspicion, calling him and his parents in the middle of the night and demanding that he come to the station in another city to provide additional biological samples, answer questions, or undergo a polygraph test. It's worth mentioning that Tara's boyfriend had to identify her. He lived in another city and came to Athens immediately upon hearing about the fire. Although Tara's parents were already in town, the police asked the boyfriend to identify her. They brought him directly to the house, but he wasn't allowed inside. Instead, a police officer went in, took a photograph of the body, and showed it to him on the camera screen. Shocked, he said he couldn't be sure if it was Tara. He then mentioned that he had given her earrings, and if he saw them, he could be certain. The officer went back inside, removed the earrings from the body, and showed them to him. Only after that did the boyfriend confirm they belonged to Tara. The police soon focused their attention on another individual, a student who attended the same classes as Tara and had a troubling reputation. Several female students came forward, saying that he repeatedly asked various girls out on dates and often didn't take no for an answer. He had also asked Tara out multiple times, even though she had been telling him that she had a boyfriend. Some girls also mentioned that this person scared them with his creepy behavior and made them feel uncomfortable. Detectives began to investigate him, but they couldn't find any evidence linking him to the crime. At one point, they even asked Tara's friends to keep an eye on him, which was a quite controversial move, but it led nowhere. Another suspect was an attorney who worked at the same company as Tara. Talking to her colleagues, investigators found out that shortly before the murder, the man began acting quite strangely in their company. There was a close-knit group of employees who socialized outside of work pretty often, and at some point, this attorney suddenly quit their group. Moreover, just a few days before the incident, he told Tara that he wouldn't be able to attend her birthday celebration, which was scheduled for the day after the murder. On the morning of January 19th, before the fire started, one of Tara's colleagues decided to try and convince him to come to the celebration since Tara considered him a good friend and she was hurt by his sudden decision. The colleague went to his office, but he wasn't there. Considering that his workday had already begun, this was strange, as he had always been present at the office in the mornings, but on that particular day, it wasn't the case. The colleague also checked his work schedule, thinking he might have meetings, but it was empty. He didn't show up that day, but the next day, he went to another colleague's house and behaved quite strangely. Many people who knew him suspected that he regularly used illicit substances, which could have explained his behavior, but there was more. The colleague noticed several fresh scratches on his neck. As we remember, skin particles from the perpetrator were found under Tara's nails, which meant that she had probably scratched her attacker. The attorney claimed he was scratched by a cat and denied any involvement in Tara's murder. However, when asked who he thought committed the crime, he acted quite oddly, starting to shout that it was her father, but provided no explanation to support this claim. Another weird thing was that the attorney suddenly resigned just a few months after the murder and left the state. It's unknown whether the police compared his DNA with the samples found under the victim's nails, as for all these years, there has been no information about whether these samples were even examined. Like with all other parts of the investigation, detectives didn't share any information, not even with Tara's relatives. The police later found out that the attorney was secretly dating two female colleagues from the company, despite being married. This could have explained his strange behavior and absence from work without apparent reasons. Both of these women also claimed they were sure he was using illegal substances. The police weren't able to find any evidence linking him to the murder, and eventually they stopped considering him a suspect. Detectives also looked into the employees of the maintenance company associated with the house where Tara rented a room. They had spare keys, which could have explained the absence of signs of forced entry, but they couldn't find any leads there either. Since then, there had been no significant progress in the case. The police continued to search for new suspects and witnesses, while keeping most details of the investigation in secret, insisting that releasing such information could harm their efforts. Over time, they received several more potential leads. One witness reporting seeing an African-American man outside Tara's house a few hours before the fire, and another mentioning seeing blood on a university classmate's notebook. Shortly after the murder, the police investigated both leads, but they didn't lead anywhere. Tara's parents raised $77,000 and offered it as a reward for any information that could help solve the case. Over the years, almost all detectives working on the case changed, but the new team continued their efforts to crack the case. However, there were no new breakthroughs. The main issue was the lack of evidence, as the fire and the firefighters' actions destroyed almost everything inside Tara's room that could have been of interest to the investigation. In 2020, 19 years after Tara's murder, a podcast emerged that shed light on her case. The podcast gathered all available information about the crime, including interviews with Tara's family and other people involved in the case. This sparked a renewed wave of interest in the case. The police department also took notice of the podcast, leading to increased communication between the new detectives and Tara's family. As a result, the police began working on the case more thoroughly, but there was still no progress. The podcast episodes dedicated to Tara aired for 2 years, significantly impacting the fate of the case. It became one of the reasons why Georgia's government came up with a bill aimed at reducing the number of unsolved cases in the state. This bill was named after Tara and another young woman from Georgia, Rhonda Coleman, whose murder remained unsolved since 1990. In 2023, the bill unanimously passed, and the governor of Georgia came to Athens to sign it in the presence of the families of both victims. The law aimed to establish an unsolved cases unit within the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. It also empowered the families of the victims to request the police to review unsolved cases, re-examine evidence, and take other steps to solve them. As soon as the law was signed in 2023, such a unit was established, specifically focusing on Tara's murder. Detectives reviewed all available information and began examining the few pieces of evidence, utilizing modern DNA analysis tools. This went on for several months until May 13, 2024, when the police called a press conference. After 23 years since the murder, they announced that the perpetrator had finally been arrested. The culprit turned out to be a 48-year-old man named Edric Lamont Faust. During the conference, investigators didn't disclose how exactly they identified the suspect, only mentioning that modern DNA analysis tools and other biological evidence played a crucial role. They refrained from revealing all details to avoid compromising the ongoing legal proceedings, and only at trial would they disclose what evidence they have against Edric. In Edric's arrest documents, among other charges, he was accused of assaulting the victim, so his biological material could have matched the DNA sample from Tara's body. As we also recall, traces of the assailant's skin were found under the victim's nails, and it's possible that modern tools allowed experts to extract the killer's DNA from it. As for Edric, he likely should have been in the FBI database for a long time due to his extensive criminal record, including numerous arrests for various offenses. At the time of Tara's murder, he was 25 and living in the same city. However, police stated they couldn't find any evidence indicating the suspect knew the victim, suggesting Edric might have broken into her home or convinced her to let him in under some pretext. Detectives also revealed that Edric had never been a suspect in the case and only came under their radar a few days before his arrest, thanks to innovative DNA analysis methods. At the moment, Edric remains in jail awaiting trial, and only during the process will we learn what evidence the police were able to find against him. Apparently, detectives did obtain indisputable DNA evidence, as Edric was denied bail, and they have no doubt that Edric is responsible for Tara's murder, so her case is officially closed. Tara's family, who fought for the truth for 23 years, finally learned what happened to her and thanked the new team of detectives for bringing closure to the case. As for Rhonda Coleman, the other woman after whom the law was named, her case remains unsolved. However, her family can now hope that detectives will discover new evidence and hold the culprit accountable, as it happened in Tara's case. Maria was born on December 6, 1996, in the family of Clemens and Friederike Ladenburger. According to the German press, both her parents were lawyers. Moreover, Her father was also a high-ranking official in the European Union. In 2016, Maria was a student at the medical faculty of the University of Freiburg. In her spare time, she worked part-time in one of the urban centers that provided assistance to immigrants. On the night of October 15th to 16th, 2016, Maria attended a party organized by the medical faculty. She had a good time with her friends, and when she started to get ready to go home, it was about 2:30 a.m. Maria lived on campus, about 3 miles from the university where the party was. After saying goodbye to her friends, she went outside and rode her bike towards the campus. It was at 2:37 a.m. At 8:20 a.m. on the same day, someone who was jogging along the river Dreisam saw a woman's body in the water near the shore. Eyewitnesses called the police and an ambulance. However, there was nothing the medics could do to help. They identified the victim as 19-year-old Maria Ladenburger. She never made it to her dorm. A jogger found her body about a mile away. During the forensic examination, the experts established that the cause of Maria's death was drowning. At the same time, someone also tried to strangle her with a scarf, which the police found at the scene. That scarf contained a sample of male DNA, apparently belonging to the perpetrator. The police also found out the probable motive for the attack on Maria. The forensic medical examination established that someone forced the girl into intimacy before her death. The police formed a special commission of 68 investigators to solve this case. In addition to the DNA on the scarf, the police found several black hairs with bleached ends, 7 inches long, in the bushes near the crime scene. Importantly, this strand of hair contained the roots, which allowed the authorities to obtain another sample of male DNA. This sample matched the one on the scarf used to strangle Maria. However, the police could not establish the identity of the person to whom the DNA samples belonged, since there was no information about him in the databases. On November 8th, the police offered a reward of €6,000 for information that could help solve this case. Thanks to several individuals, the reward amount soon increased to €35,000. The police questioned more than 1,000 people, including the ones who attended the party, which was the last for Maria. At the same time, more than 100 people voluntarily provided DNA samples for comparative analysis. Most of the people who provided their DNA were those who attended the party. Yet, none of these samples matched the DNA found at the crime scene. Residents of Freiburg were shocked after details of Maria's death appeared in the press. People bought up all the pepper sprays in the city as they understood that the criminal was still at large. In addition, cases of harassment of women have become more frequent in the city. A few days before Maria Ladenburger's death, several refugees harassed a young woman in the same area. Another similar incident occurred 2 weeks earlier. Self-defense courses have never been so in demand in Freiburg before. Many people went to local sports centers to learn how to defend themselves. Meanwhile, 25 additional officers started patrolling the city to increase security. People are afraid to go outside alone at night, Mayor Dieter Salomon said. We cannot put up with this situation. 25 additional officers may seem like a drop in the bucket, but for a city with a high crime rate, it was a signal that the authorities were finally interested in Freiburg's problems. The police checked all possible leads. However, the decisive moment in identifying the perpetrator was the hair and scarf found at the scene. Knowing that the man they were looking for had long black hair with bleached ends, the police started analyzing the recordings from many city cameras. Looking through the CCTV footage from the city tram, they saw a man with a similar hair color and length. The man had an undercut, short hair on the side and back, and longer hair on top. This recording was from the night of October 16th at 1:57 a.m., 40 minutes before Maria left the party. The suspect got on a tram near the university. After about 20 minutes, he got off at the final stop, which was less than a mile from the place where a jogger later found Maria's body. As the police reported, while on the tram, the suspect was bothering 2 girls, but they eventually managed to rid themselves of his attention. On December 3, 2016, almost 7 weeks after Maria's death, The police arrested a suspect, 17-year-old Hussein Kavari. Initially, the authorities considered him an immigrant who came to Germany from Afghanistan. Yet, during the investigation, it turned out that he was not 17 years old and that he was not a citizen of Afghanistan. Kavari entered Germany without an ID card in November 2015. When crossing the border, he said that he came from Afghanistan and that he was born in 1999. Hussein Kavari stated that he was 16 when he entered the country. He did not have any documents confirming or refuting this. Due to his stated age, Germany granted him asylum as an underage unaccompanied refugee. They sent Kavari to live with a foster German family in a picturesque town near the Black Forest, where he went through a local school, learned German, and received government benefits. Such a trick with age fabrication turned out to be a common phenomenon, which at that time gave an advantage not only when applying for asylum, but also in case of breaking the laws. After all, the punishment for juvenile offenders is less severe. We'll return to the suspect's age later because it's just the tip of the iceberg in his biography. After the police arrested Kavari as the main suspect in the Maria Ladenburger case, his image appeared in the press. While the German media tried to hide his face, the TV channels and newspapers of other European countries did not do this, publishing a non-blurred picture of his face. The lawyer from Greece, Maria Ladenburger, saw photos of the arrested young man in the media and recognized him. She defended him in court in the spring of 2013. At that time, he was charged and found guilty of a life-threatening attack on a young student on the island of Corfu, Greece. Kavari robbed a 20-year-old student and threw her over a cliff. The girl flew about 25 feet down and, by some miracle, survived, thanks to the bushes on which she fell. She spent 17 days in the hospital and underwent 3 surgeries. The police arrested Kavari, and when the girl recovered, she identified him as the man who attacked her. However, Kavari himself did not understand the reason for his arrest, stating that she was just a woman when talking to the police. The court sentenced a young asylum seeker to 10 years in prison for theft and attempted life deprivation. What's important here is that during the trial, he claimed that he came from Iran and that he was born in 1996. But when he entered Germany, he claimed to have been born in 1999. So here's the question. How did Hussein Kavari get to Germany in 2015 if he was sentenced to 10 years in prison in Greece in 2014? And here's the answer. He was released on parole in October 2015 due to prison overcrowding in Greece. He'd violated his probation by not regularly reporting to a police station, coming there only once. They put him on the wanted list, but it only applied to Greece. At that time, the borders were open, and Kavari, along with thousands of other refugees, went to Germany, where he fabricated his age to impersonate an underage unaccompanied asylum seeker. After Kavari was arrested as a suspect in the Maria Ladenburger case, his fingerprints were compared with fingerprints from the crime scene in Greece. This confirmed that he was the same person who had attacked the woman in Corfu. After learning all this, Germany had many questions for the Greek authorities. Since the police did not initiate a search for Kavari via Interpol, he entered Germany unhindered. Germany's Federal Minister of the Interior, Thomas de Maizière, called it gross negligence and was outraged that Greece had not shared information about this refugee. The suspect would have been caught at the border and checked by the German security authorities if we had received information from Greece. All this happened in a reprehensible way. We will have to talk to the Greeks about this process, Maizière said. While the police in Germany and Greece were trying to sort things out among themselves, ordinary residents of Germany, including the ones from Freiburg, demanded the authorities to take action against uncontrolled immigration. In response to the discontent of residents, Freiburg's Mayor Dieter Salomon stated they shouldn't use Kavari's origin as a case against immigration policy. He proposed to treat it as a separate incident. At the same time, the Alternative for Germany party called Maria Ladenburger a victim of Angela Merkel's welcome culture. Unfortunately, Maria Ladenburger's story was not the only one of its kind. On December 27, 2017, in Kandel, A refugee from Afghanistan, 15-year-old Abdul Dawodzai, attacked his classmate, 15-year-old Mia Valentine, with a knife in broad daylight. The motive for the attack was that Mia stopped talking with him. As a result, she died in the hospital, and police arrested Dawodzai. The girl's parents doubted that Dawodzai was 15 years old and demanded to find out his age. They determined his age by X-rays of his arm, collarbone, and teeth. The expert concluded that Dawodzai was at least 17 years old and most likely around 20. Still, they tried him as a minor, meaning the maximum penalty was 10 years in prison. On September 3, 2018, the court sentenced him to 8.5 years behind bars, which provoked the anger not only of the girl's parents, but also of the entire society. It is important to note that a year after his conviction, Dawodzai was found dead in his prison cell. He had committed self-harm, and doctors had not had time to treat him. On March 12, 2018, an underage unaccompanied refugee from Afghanistan, Ahmad, attacked 17-year-old Mireille Bold in her apartment in Flensburg. Mireille and Ahmad dated for 2 years, but when the guy started controlling her every move, the girl broke up with him and started a relationship with another guy. As a result, she died from 14 stab wounds. At the trial, Ahmad claimed that he was 17 years old at the time of the attack, and that they should try him as a minor, which implied a maximum sentence of 10 years. But the examination showed that Ahmad was not 17 years old, as he claimed, but about 29. The judge agreed with the examination results, deciding to try Ahmad as an adult. The court sentenced him to life imprisonment. However, under certain conditions, the German law on life imprisonment provides for the right to early release after 15 years. Authorities also urged not to forget that exactly the same crimes are committed by Germans. When the police said that the perpetrator was a refugee, the tension in society started to grow. Maria's parents, Friederike and Clemens Ladenburger, refrained from condemning speeches. Instead, they founded the Maria Ladenburger Foundation in memory of their daughter. This foundation brought them a civic award of 20,000 euros from the Federal Association of German Newspaper Publishers in Berlin. If at some point my children or grandchildren ask me what I did to help the world develop in the direction that I thought was right, I at least want to say that I took advantage of the opportunities I had. This quote from Maria served as the basis for creating this foundation. It supports students of the University of Freiburg in difficult life situations. For example, first-year students who do not have enough financial resources to study, especially refugee students. Friederike Ladenburger said she wants people to remember her daughter's name not only because of a terrible act, but also because of her life. Clemens Ladenburger stated, "The crime against Maria has deeply shocked people in Germany. Together with other events, it brought several political issues to public discussion. As Maria's parents, we do not want acts of hatred or cold-blooded contempt in our society to cause hatred and incitement to others. Otherwise, the destructive spiral threatens to undermine the foundations of social coexistence." As parents, they considered expressing their Christian beliefs, but decided not to speak publicly. We believe that our restraint, our interest in an objective discussion of these complex political issues, ultimately serves us well. By creating the foundation, they wanted to encourage people to use their educational opportunities and individuality to find their place in society. When our life became full of darkness, pain, and confusion, a deep sense of gratitude settled in us. Thanks for the gift, for our Maria. This attitude helps to control fate, said Friederike Ladenburger. We felt like God had given us the strength to cope with this fate. He is with us. He accompanies us. We realized that we now have a new life task, to cope with the violent death of our daughter, and we will cope. We've been saying this to each other since the beginning, and we keep saying it now. And the feeling of gratitude that we talked about helps us to prevent all other feelings from arising so strongly that they take over, said Clemens Ladenburger. Now, let's get back to Maria's case. In addition to DNA evidence, the police now had Hussein Kavari's confession. The trial began in September 2017. Cavari admitted that he forced Maria into intimacy and took her life. Moreover, the man also confessed that he lied about his age. He did not tell the court how old he was, but only confirmed that he was of legal age. While under oath, the forensic dentist said the defendant was probably between 22 and 29 years old. About 8 months before the attack on Maria Ladenburger, Cavari had his tooth extracted during a routine dental procedure. He kept it as a souvenir that the police found while searching his apartment. According to the expert, one can establish the person's age by the annual rings in the tooth's root. That's how the forensic dentist knew Hussein Cavari's age ranged from 22 to 29 years old. The method is safe and gives accurate results. X-ray examinations, for example of wrist bones often used to diagnose aging, are considered relatively imprecise. Therefore, Senior Prosecutor Eckhart Berger called the dental examination crucial evidence in establishing the defendant's age. Cavari claimed that his father died many years ago in Afghanistan. However, the police established that his father was alive and lived in Iran. The court got a clearer picture of Cavari's age after the prosecutor contacted his father by phone. According to the father, his son was born in Iran on January 29, 1984, which means he was 32 years old at the time of Maria's death. As a result, they tried him as an adult. During the trial, he said that a couple of hours before the attack, he and his friends had consumed a large amount of alcohol and took some prohibited substances. After partying with his friends, he got on a tram and drove to the area where he later attacked Maria. In her spare time, Maria worked part-time at the Immigrant Assistance Center in Freiburg. She tried to help people who found themselves in a difficult life situation. By some evil fate, she died at the hands of one of these people. As the crime sparked public anger and disgust, social media users posted sarcastic thank you messages to Chancellor Angela Merkel over her liberal policy that brought more than 1 million refugees and immigrants to the country. During the trial, prosecutor Eckhart Berger had reminded the two jurors sitting alongside 3 judges that on trial is a criminal offender and not Germany's refugee policy. Cavari sobbed in court as he read out a statement of apology to the victim's family. He claimed he had nightmares about Maria's death every day. "I beg your pardon. I want to apologize to the family of Maria. I wish I could undo it," he said. "What I have done, I am sad for from the bottom of my heart. I live with the agony of what I did, and this torment destroys my life by and by." At the trial, Hussein Cavari told everyone about his challenging fate. He described his journey from Iran to Turkey, Turkey to Greece, and finally through Serbia and Slovenia to Germany. He spoke about life among the ruins, eating from garbage in Greece, theft, and the use of illegal substances and alcohol while staying in a foster family in Germany as an underage refugee. In court, he stated that he suffers from psychological conditions and has nightmares and frequent insomnia. Among other things, his stress was due to worries about his homeland. "I have many problems. I have a lot of problems," Cavari said. During his testimony, he described the night he took Maria Ladenburger's life. According to him, a few hours before the crime, he and his friends drank 2 bottles of vodka. Then he drank beer and wine alone. He also smoked several cigarettes and used illegal substances. He then got on a tram near the future crime scene. He bothered other girls on the tram, and when he reached the final stop, he stole a bicycle there. However, he fell off the bike because he was too drunk. When he saw Maria, he pushed her off the bike and put his hand over her mouth. She started screaming, and he decided to strangle her with a scarf, which made her lose consciousness. According to Cavari, he noticed that Maria Ladenburger was a beautiful girl and decided to take advantage of the fact that she was unconscious. Then he carried Maria into the water, where she drowned. Authorities believe that Cavari moved Maria into the water to destroy the evidence left on her body. Cavari claimed that he was too drunk and had no control over his actions. He said he didn't want it to end the way it ended. Prosecutors disputed his version of events and alleged his actions were premeditated. A psychiatric expert testified that he believed the remorse Cavari displayed was fake, telling the court that the defendant exhibited a great and persistent readiness for violence and warned there was a high risk of him reoffending. Cavari harbored an interest in aggressive sexual practices and a hostile attitude towards women, he said. Moreover, he does not show remorse and compassion for the suffering of others. Maria's parents decided not to attend the trial. A lawyer they hired represented their interests. Maria's father, Clemens Ladenburger, said, "We wanted the most constructive, objective justice possible, but without additional media hype, political statements, and impact on the course of the trial due to emotional statements from the victims, that is, from us." When asked by a journalist if they had any desire to meet face-to-face with the criminal, Maria's father replied, "We kept this question open. In any case, it was unclear from the very beginning whether we would stay away from the process from beginning to end. But during the discussion, we asked each other whether Maria wanted us to be there, and we concluded she does not want that. Moreover, based on the criminal's characteristics and behavior in court, we increasingly believed we would not achieve anything by this confrontation. We knew it would not help us." On September 22, 2018, Hussein Cavari was found guilty. Presiding Judge Catherine Schenck condemned the extreme lack of empathy of Cavari, who was handcuffed and wearing a black hooded jumper, before reading out the verdict and sentence, which many in the courtroom greeted with applause. The court sentenced him to life imprisonment. As mentioned earlier, the German law on life imprisonment provides for the right to early release after 15 years if the parole board concludes that the convict does not pose a danger to society. However, during sentencing, the judge noted the extreme severity of Hussein Cavari's guilt. It means his early release from prison after 15 years is legally possible, but practically unrealistic. March 14, 2003, The Hobbit Pub, Southampton, England. On that evening, everyone at this pub was chilling out. Among them were a girl named Hannah Foster and her friend. Both of them were having a great time there, and when they felt it was getting late, both friends left the pub by 10:50 p.m. Now, since it was quite late at night, Hannah Foster's friend caught a bus from a road named Portswood and headed home. On the other hand, Hannah started walking home because her house was just 800 meters away, roughly 0.5 miles. 3 people lived in Hannah's house: her father, Trevor Foster, her mother, Hilary Foster, and her younger sister, Sarah. The Fosters were early sleepers and early risers, so they usually went to bed early. They assumed that their daughter would come home, eat, and then go to bed on her own. However, when Hannah's mother woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, she couldn't find Hannah anywhere in the house. Normally, it wouldn't take Hannah more than half an hour to come home, but now several hours had passed. Therefore, Hannah's mother, Hilary, called her daughter, but Hannah wasn't answering any calls. After this, gradually Hannah's father and younger sister also come to know about her. Following this, Hannah's father, Trevor Foster, calls the girl with whom Hannah went to the Hobbit Pub the previous night, but she tells the same story that I've already told you. After this, Hannah's family also tries to find her themselves, but by now it was already 10:30 in the morning, so Hannah's father starts to worry a lot about his daughter. Because of this, he goes to the Southampton police station and files a missing complaint for him. Now the police start investigating the missing person case from their side and first trace her phone. Well, the good thing was that Hannah's phone was active, and the police traced the phone through the mobile towers. Naturally, the location of Hannah's phone was showing approximately 20 to 25 miles away from her home. Now the police reached there within an hour. Where the police found Hannah's phone was the city's recycling center, and along with the phone, they also found Hannah's bag there, but Hannah was not found. On March 15th, Hannah is also extensively searched for, but her whereabouts are not found. As they continue the search, March 16th arrives, and Southampton police receive a call from an anonymous man from the outskirts of the city. He informs them that he has just seen a girl's body in the bushes. a police team is dispatched to the location provided by the man. Since the previous day, the police had been searching for Hannah Foster, and they also had her picture. Therefore, the police first compare Hannah's picture with the discovered dead body, and they believe it to be Hannah Foster's. Subsequently, Hannah's family is also summoned, and upon seeing a member of their family in this condition, they become quite emotional. Nonetheless, the body is then sent for post-mortem. The police have to wait for several hours for it. However, when the post-mortem report arrives, it states that Hannah was first raped and then murdered by strangulation. However, some traces of the killer's semen were found on Hannah's clothes, and this made the police believe that the case would be solved soon, because DNA would be extracted from the semen and matched with the database to find the killer. But the police's imagination proved wrong when the DNA sample of the killer was not found in their database. Anyway, here the police, losing hope, check Hannah's call details, which leads the investigators to take another step towards solving this case. Actually, Hannah had last called the emergency number 999 from her phone, and the operator had answered the call. The call lasted for 50 seconds. After that, the police reached the operator and collect Hannah's call recording from there. In addition, the operator said, "I kept saying, 'This is emergency helpline, what's an emergency?' for 50 seconds, but there was no response from the other end." When investigators enhanced the recording of Hannah's call, they realized that she is sitting in a moving vehicle. Additionally, there is another faint voice with a South Asian accent. The man asks Hannah questions while she sits quietly, appearing scared and intimidated. After obtaining the call recording, the investigating team accelerates progress in Hannah Foster's murder case. Now, the police also check all the CCTV cameras in the area where Hannah's friend last bid her farewell and caught a bus. After scrutinizing several CCTV footages from that road, the police eventually narrow down to 7 suspect vehicles. On the other hand, Hannah's parents are eager to see their daughter's killer brought to justice swiftly. They now also discuss these 7 vehicles in public. In the meantime, on March 26th, Hannah's parents talked to people through a local crime TV show called Crime Watch about those cars. As a result, it emerged that one of the 7 suspect vehicles shown on TV was a van belonging to their company, Hazelwood Foods. The supervisor, James Dennis, called in and said that the driver of this van does not have his own vehicle, so he also uses this van to come and go from his home. Furthermore, that night, the driver had gone to deliver on this road. The time and location of the van were exactly where Hannah had started to walk home alone. After that, the police get a good lead for the first time in this case. The man driving the van was named Maninder Pal Singh Kohli. Upon speaking to the company's supervisor, it was found that on the morning of March 15th, Maninder Pal came to work, but there were some marks on his face, whereas there were no marks on his face the previous day, that is on the 14th. Additionally, on March 15th, Maninder only worked half a day and then took half a day off citing a back pain reason. However, it was only later discovered by the police that Maninder hadn't returned to work since that day. Now, hearing the whole story, investigating officers along with forensic experts arrived at Hazelwood Company. Subsequently, the van driven by Maninder was thoroughly examined by forensic experts, and some traces of semen and blood were found in his vehicle as well. With all this evidence, such as Maninder Pal's disappearance, finding semen and blood in his van, they were pointing fingers directly at him for Hannah's murder. However, apart from this, the police once again scrutinized Maninder Pal's van through CCTV cameras, and it becomes clear from the CCTV footage that Maninder Pal had taken his van to the recycling center on the night of March 14th, and where Hannah's body was found, his van had also passed through that road. Maninder Pal had now become the prime suspect for the police. Therefore, the police now embark on the search for Maninder Pal, and first they go to his home address, obtained from the sandwich company where he used to work. There, Maninder Pal's wife and 2 children used to live, and his wife was a citizen of the UK. But upon reaching there, the police learn something that completely changes the course of the case. In fact, Maninder's wife reveals that he had actually left for India on March 18th because Maninder's mother was very ill. After learning this, it was imperative for the Southampton police to apprehend Maninder Pal in the Hannah Foster murder case, but it was equally challenging. And then, amidst all this, when a blood sample is taken from one of Maninder Pal's sons and the DNA is extracted from it, it matches the DNA found on Hannah's clothes and inside Maninder Pal's van. Now, because a son inherits about half of his father's genes, therefore, the DNA of both the father and son is approximately 99.99% identical. It had already been confirmed that Maninder Pal was indeed the real culprit. After that, the police from England contacts India through the government. Now, since Maninder Pal's ancestral home was in the city of Chandigarh in India, assistance is sought from the police there. Subsequently, the Chandigarh police obtained the address of Maninder's house and reached there. Here, the police find out that Maninder Pal had come to meet his mother a few days ago, but after staying there for 3 to 4 days, he left. Since then, he has not contacted his home. The police also learn another piece of information from Maninder Pal's family at home, that when he was in England, he used to wear a turban and keep a beard. But when he came to India, he got a clean shave and also got his hair cut. Until now, Hannah's parents had also found out about their daughter's killer, and they were also waiting for him to be caught. But now, the Chandigarh police was not giving this case much priority. By this time, the news of this case had not even appeared in the Indian media, so normal people didn't know much about it. As time passed slowly, there was not much progress in the investigation. A considerable amount of time had passed, so Hannah's parents took it upon themselves to catch the killer. Then, about 15 months after their daughter's death on July 10, 2004, they come to India. At this time, they were only in India for 10 days. After that, they come straight to Chandigarh and speak to the local media there, appealing to catch their daughter's killer, Maninder Pal. Apart from this, Hannah's parents had separate pictures of Maninder. In one photo, he had a beard and a turban, while in another photo, he had shaved his beard and cut his hair. It was easy to identify Maninder through these pictures. After this, Hannah's parents waited for a few days. But then they decided to go to Delhi because there are national and international media offices. I made a promise that we would be friends. After this step by Hannah's parents, the news of their daughter's murder spread throughout India within 24 hours. The headline of every newspaper and news channel became Hannah Foster and Maninder Pal. Here, Hannah's parents also arranged a free hotline so that anyone who knew about the murderer could call this number. The Southampton police here announced through a news agency called The Sun that they would give 5 million Indian rupees to the person who provides any information about Maninder Pal. By now, this news had spread like wildfire throughout India. Then, on July 15, 2004, a car driver residing in the city of Darjeeling, in the state of West Bengal, India, called a retired police officer whom he knew. Now this police officer had already retired. The driver called the officer and told him, "There is a man who has been living here for a few months, and his appearance resembles that of Hannah Foster's killer, as shown in the news. He started appearing here shortly after Hannah's murder." Upon hearing the driver's words, the retired officer immediately sets out to see this man. The officer remembered Maninder Pal's face because they were following this case through the news channel. Afterwards, when that driver showed the police officer the man, the officer was quite surprised. Then he immediately contacted the local police, and the local police caught Maninder Pal in the bus, going from Kalimpong town to Nepal. Here, the police find out that Maninder Pal was planning to flee to Nepal after seeing his news on TV channels and newspapers. Besides, the police also find out that Maninder Pal had changed his name to Mike Davis in West Bengal. In addition to Maninder, there was also a woman on the bus, and then it was revealed that Maninder had remarried after coming to India. Now, Maninder was arrested and brought to Delhi, and during the custody of a few days here, Maninder confessed to his crime. Then he told the whole story of how he murdered Hannah that night. The story was something like this, Actually, on the night of March 14, 2003, Maninder was parked on that road drinking in his van where Hannah passed by. But when he saw Hannah, bad thoughts started coming to his mind. Afterwards, he forcibly kidnapped Hannah and placed her in the van. Although there, Hannah requested to be released from Maninder, but Maninder paid no heed to her requests. In the meantime, Hannah also called the emergency helpline number, but due to Maninder's presence, she couldn't say anything. This led the call operator to believe it might be a missed dial. Later, Maninder takes Hannah to a deserted area and rapes her. However, after committing the crime, he realizes that if he lets Hannah go alive, she will go to the police and file a complaint. Therefore, Maninder strangles her to death. Then he disposes of Hannah's body where it was found. On March 15th, the next day, Maninder takes half a day off from work under the pretext of a back pain. But he had Hannah's mobile phone and handbag with him, so he dumps them in a recycling bin at the city recycling center. Afterwards, he goes to one of his friends and asks for some money on loan because he had to go to India to meet his sick mother. However, his friend doesn't have as much money as Maninder needed. Then Maninder comes back home and also tells his British wife that his mother is sick in India and he needs to go there and requires some money. Understanding Maninder's need, his wife talks to her father, and on March 17th, Maninder's father-in-law lends him some money. The very next day, Maninder catches a flight to India. However, the excuse of his mother being sick was just a pretext. In reality, Maninder had come to India to escape from the England police. Upon arriving in India, Maninder goes to Chandigarh, his ancestral home, meets his mother, but here he completely changes his appearance. After changing his appearance, Maninder goes to Darjeeling, and after some time he changes his name and marries another woman there, where he starts living thereafter. Now, because neither anyone in India knew about Hannah Foster's murder nor about Maninder Pal, Maninder wasn't caught for 15 months. But then, when Hannah's parents come to India, only then is Maninder caught. Anyway, after that, Maninder is brought to Delhi, and then on July 28, 2004, giving an interview to a news channel, he confessed his crime on TV. The product Ella Foster. Let's question level that I was calling up over the mic up. We event last bugged on that little road that she's looking. Just pick while out and like you know, there on the other road and let's go how to get it. Then I start for But upon the whole incident, while confessing, Maninder denies and says, "That night I had drunk a lot. I didn't want to kill Hannah, but when I met her, then Hannah started threatening to complain to the police. Although I threatened her a lot, but she didn't agree, which led me to kill her. I wrote a long bad night. Put that my mother is very ill in India. I want to work with the eyes though. It is very, very bad upon me and all of that. Her, that beer I was totally that might, my hand was, and I done let crying." However, in August 2004, Maninder Pal changed his statement. He said, "I didn't do all this willingly, but it was done to me forcibly." After this statement, Maninder was placed under judicial custody in Delhi, and then the process of extradition to Britain begins. This process takes about 3 years, but finally on June 8, 2007, the court granted permission for Maninder Pal to go to England. Once in England, Hampshire police arrest Maninder. Then Maninder's blood sample is taken, and it matches 100% with the DNA found from Hannah's clothes and semen obtained from the van. After that, from December 10, 2007, the trial begins in the Winchester Crown Court. Here, Maninder appeals not guilty to all the charges against him. Maninder said, "That night, some criminals broke the window of the van and threw Hannah's body inside the van. Now, because they was drunk to trap me, those criminals forced me to rape Hannah, and they may even force to kill her." Even in court, Haslewood Foods Company supervisor James Dennis testified, but Maninder said, "I borrowed 16,000 euros from James, and he is also under the misconception that I am having an affair with his wife. That's why James is targeting me." Maninder also said, "Maybe James hired those 3 men to frame me and forced me to commit this crime on the night of March 14th. But in the end, when the police investigated Maninder Pal's all statements, it all turned out to be lies, and finally, On November 25, 2008, all the allegations against Meninder Pal were proven. After that, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Now he will be imprisoned without parole for at least 24 years. At the time of sentencing, he was 41 years old, and he will remain in jail until 2030. Of the 5 million rupees reward offered for catching Meninder Pal, 367,000 rupees were given to the taxi driver who first informed the police about Meninder Pal. With this, the money was divided among 12 other people, because besides the taxi driver Jason Lepcha, those people also played an important role in solving this case. However, Jason used that money to buy land and then established a school for disadvantaged children on it, named the Hannah Memorial Academy in Foster's memory. Then, in 2006, when Hannah's parents visited Darjeeling and learned about this, they were very pleased. When these people returned to England, Hannah's parents started a registered charity to help Jason along with other people. This now greatly helps Jason Lepcha's school. So, friends, this was the complete story of the Hannah Foster murder case.